It's really nice to finally see you and speak to you, and it's been nice emailing with you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And then Niti Sara Das. Very nice to see you, Maharaj.
Nityasara.
Yeah, Niti Sara.
Oh, Niti Sara.
Yeah.
Oh, who's your guru?
Hanumat Prashak Swami, Maharaj.
Oh, Hanuman Preshika. Yeah, old friend.
Chai.
My name is Anadi Radha Dasi, and Maharaj, I've met you in New Vrindavan many years ago, I guess in 2015. So, and
Oh,
yes, when you were there, I think a couple times, but so I asked you many questions actually. uh, but yeah, now I'm here in Boise. I'm from Boise.
oh. So, who's your guru?
Gopal Krishna Maharaj.
Oh, Gopal Krishna. You know that I attended his wedding.
Really?
Yeah, that was in 1970.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, he was a very good friend. We had a really special friendship for a very long time.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, we're sad that we don't have him anymore, but I hear his instructions, from
Yeah, and and someone's got him. I mean, he's still doing active service.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
So back in the peanut gallery back there.
Hare Krishna, I am Tanupriya. Tanupriya. Yeah.
Sanupriya?
Tanupriya, yes. Tanu.
And where are you from?
Alaska.
Alaska.
Yes, we just moved to Boise a month and a half ago.
Interesting.
Yes.
I mean, someone's got to be from Alaska, right? Otherwise, they would shut it all down.
Yes. This is my first time here, and I'm very excited to attend this.
Oh, well, I'm very happy you're here.
Hare Krishna, my name is Kellen, my Tanupriya.
Very good. So, Kanapriya, who's your guru?
No guru yet.
Oh, you're born in a Hindu family?
Yes.
So
Born
you're
in
like
India.
yeah, that's sort of like already almost not pre-initiated, but you have a big head start.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my dad definitely had a guru, but yes, yeah, in India. So we used to go there, but not in ISKCON. No guru yet in ISKCON.
Well, anyway, thank you all for coming, and I thought it'd be interesting for you all just to ask whatever question you may have.
Chai, that sounds great to us.
And yeah, see if you can stump the guru, win a prize.
Stump the guru.
You want me to start?
You can, yeah.
I was very, very interested to hear your perspective on cow protection from like a historical context. I haven't really heard much about it.
Right. Yeah, first of all, it's good to anticipate what people might say. For example, if the cow is our mother because she gives us milk, what about the many millions of people in India that drink buffalo milk? So would the buffalo be their mother? Or even in America, and I'm sure many other Western countries, some people prefer goat milk. So could we say mother goat or mother buffalo, and mother cow? So it's interesting to think about that. And we know that Krishna, he says in the Bhagavad Gita that the duties of Vaishyas in chapter 18 are Krishi, Goraksha, Vanijam. The three duties of Vaishyas, which mean Krishi means agriculture, and like plowing, literally plowing and agriculture. And then Goraksha, cow protection, and Vanija, which means commerce, trade. So my vision of all this is that ultimately Krishna wants us, in fact, he teaches us that we should see him and the soul in all living beings. So, in fact, so this is important to understand because, so why don't we start from there? Krishna says in the Gita that he uses an expression which is sarva bhuta hite rataha, which literally means one who is dedicated to the well-being of all creatures, of all creatures. So let me see if I wonder, I can't remember if Krishna says that once or twice. Let's see. I'll tell you. He says it, actually does say it twice. He says it in chapter 5, text 25, that Labante Brahma Nirvana, that Rishaya, the sages achieve Brahma Nirvana. The word Nirvana originally comes from the Gita, and Brahma Nirvana means, the word Nirvana is actually a grammatically negative word because nir means without. So Nirvana literally means without vana. And vana is sort of like the current of material existence, births and deaths. So when you stop that, it's that's nirvana. Now the problem there. Oh, I should introduce, by the way, my very dear disciple Nalini, who is even though she's not well, she's down in Argentina, saving all living entities down there, and she's a wonderful devotee. So I hope you'll get to meet her. So hite means for the welfare, and rataha means one sort of not just dedicated, but sort of joyfully dedicated. And so the word rata actually comes from the Sanskrit root rum, not to be confused with the Caribbean beverage. But so the Sanskrit root rum, of course, is the source of Rama. And it means to take pleasure or to give pleasure. And then from that root rum, you get rataha, which means one who's taking pleasure or one who's dedicated to. So Krishna says twice in the Gita that let's see, put light on. Let's see if that helps. Exposed, right? Now you see who I really am. So, so it means that, so Krishna says in chapter 5, I'll read you literally what Krishna says there. He says, Labante Brahma Nirvanam, that those sages achieve Brahma Nirvana, nirvana in the absolute truth. So Krishna's expression, Brahma Nirvana, is not negative. Because if you say that our goal is to become free of something, that tells you absolutely nothing about the positive thing. It's like saying, okay, my my hand hurt, so now it doesn't hurt anymore. So that's my life. So maybe I should just, that's the end of my life because all I really want to do in life is get this pain out of my hand. I mean, so that's obviously not a complete understanding of self-interest. So Krishna says Brahma Nirvana. It's nirvana, but it's in the absolute truth. But he also says, but you have to be China Kalmashaha. One has to be purified of or free of all impurities, and Chinna Dvaita, free of duality, and Jatatmana, self-controlled, literally. And then he says you have to be Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. You have to be dedicated to, devoted to the well-being of every creature. And that's a requirement for liberation, because if you're not dedicated to the well-being of every creature, you don't understand that they're souls. If you don't understand their souls, you don't understand that you are a soul, because there's no such thing as sort of private self-realization. Like I'm only realizing myself, I'm not interested in other people. It's like when the sun rises, and Krishna says that spiritual knowledge is adityavat, like the sun. So when the sun rises, it illuminates everything equally and simultaneously.
Mm.
And so either you understand the soul or you don't. You can't understand your soul and just not understand everybody else's soul. Not possible. So therefore, being dedicated to the well-being of everyone, not just cows, but being dedicated to the well-being of everyone is necessary for your own self-realization. So that's in chapter 5, text 25. And then an interesting 629, Krishna says, in order to really be self-realized, you have to see that there's a soul in everyone. And then you have to see that Krishna's in everyone. Sarva Bhutas, that's 631. Sarva Bhutas Titang Jomang Bhajati, one who worships me as situated in every creature and fixed in oneness, ekatvam. Eka means one and twamness, oneness. And so it doesn't mean literally that, we merge into something like that, but it means that because Krishna says sarvabhuta. So it's understood there's lots of people in the universe. Because if there was only one impersonal thing, Krishna repeatedly saying sarvabhuta in all creatures would be unintelligible. So it's taken for granted there are differences, but there's a oneness too. And Krishna also says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 20, that that's the sign of a worldview or knowledge of the mode of goodness, that you see the variety, but you see avibhaktam vibhakteshu. There's a spiritual truth, which is avibhaktam, undivided, vibhakteshu, and all the divided creatures. So therefore, I'm mentioning all this point. It's not that we care about cows, but we just kind of kick to the curb other animals, or stomp on insects or something. So ultimately, every creature is part of Krishna and is dear to Krishna. And so this term sarvabhuta, all creatures, it just keeps popping up everywhere in the Gita. And then finally, in chapter 12, where Arjuna asked Krishna, like, who's more advanced, impersonalists or personalists? And Krishna says very strongly, it's the personalists. And he said the impersonalists will eventually get there. They're kind of the caboose of the train, I mean, they'll eventually get there, but it's going to take a while. That's what Krishna says. It's going to take a while. And he says, even then, they can only transcend their impersonal mistake if they are sarvabhuta hiterata, dedicated to the welfare of all creatures. So I mentioned that topic because, and Krishna also in the Gita, in the verse sarvopam yena sarvatra, which means that, I'll tell you what verse it is. Sarvopam. Why isn't it coming up? Not found. How did I get that wrong? That's Yena Sarvatra. If I forgot this, you're entitled to a refund.
No.
Oh, it's Atmopam Yena. I found it. So forget your refund. So Krishna says in verse 632, Atmopam Yena Sarvatra. That a person who, by comparing themselves to all other beings, sees equally, that we're all equal, that all living things are equal ultimately. And that's, Krishna says, that person is considered the highest yogi. So to be the highest yogi, you have to see that. And then Krishna says that Sarvo. Oh my God, I say that. God, am I rusty today? Maybe I didn't eat enough chocolate today or something. Krishna says that what am I missing? That Bhakti Mai Parang, that oh my God, what is it? Sarvo oh, I know what I did wrong. Okay, I got it. Yes, in chapter 18, text 54, Krishna says that someone who really has reached spiritual platform is a very happy soul who does not lament or hanker, and that person is equal to all creatures. And then that devotee achieves Mad Bhakti Labate Parang, achieves the highest bhakti. So to achieve the highest bhakti, you have to be equal to everyone. And Krishna says also in that famous verse, Pandita Samadarshana, where he's saying that, Krishna says, whether it's a learned and gentle Brahmana or a cow well, this is really good. Actually, I got the smoking gun here, or the smoking Brahmastra, because Krishna actually is saying he includes the cow. And Krishna says, oh God, where have you been all my life? I'm talking to the sloka, because this is really a great sloka. And Krishna says, the very famous verse, that the pandita, the wise persons, wise people see equally a learned and gentle brahmana, a cow. Gavi means a cow. Hastini, an elephant. Suni, a dog. Or, I mean, we say dog eater. Actually, in Sanskrit is a dog cooker. That's really gross. That is like so gross. But, and Krishna is using that word to kind of gross everyone out. So no one will think of doing that. So shapakecha, paka means cooking. Anyway, what's amazing, Krishna says the wise see all of these creatures equally, including the cow. So we don't see the cow as better than other creatures, ultimately, spiritually. But then what's going on? Like, why does Krishna herd cows? Why does Krishna talk about cow protection? Because he explicitly says in chapter 5, text 18, that you should see all creatures equally, including the cow. So the idea is, and here's my theory, which when I was a how old was I? Wasn't even 21. My God, I guess Krishna really robbed the cradle with me. But I was 22 and a half, and I was serving as the first president of ISKCON Gainesville in Alachua County. And I was a grihasta, proud and white. I guess you can't say that, right? You can't say it nowadays, like white and proud, even if you mean that I was a grihasta. People, very likely misunderstand that. Anyway, so I wrote Prabhupada a letter. I think I told him that I was studying his books a lot, and he was very happy with that. And then Prabhupada with me, he often just brought up things he wanted to tell me. And so he said that we don't engage in mental speculation, but we do engage in philosophical speculation. And of course, that was Prabhupada's jargon he was using. So this is how he explained it to me in the letter. He said that Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Rasoham apsu konteya, I'm the taste of water. So if you think, is that really true? I mean, I don't know if I really believe that. That's mental speculation. We don't do that. Because if you do, of course, you void your warranty. That Krishna says that I will take care of you. So, but then Prabhupada said, if you believe what Krishna said, if you accept, that Krishna really is the taste of water. But then you think, what the heck does that mean? Like, what does it mean to be the taste of water? So Prabhupada said that's philosophical speculation, and that's encouraged. I mean, you can do that. You accept what Krishna said, but you're trying to understand it, which ultimately is even better than just sort of blindly accepting it, but never deeply understanding it, and never worrying about the fact that you don't deeply understand it. So regarding Srimati Cow, this is how I understand that Krishna ultimately, as he makes extremely clear in the Bhagavad Gita, is insisting that we have to be kind and compassionate to every creature. We have to see every creature as part of Krishna. We have to see ourselves as ultimately equal to all other living beings. And that's strongly emphasized in the Gita. And yet, and Krishna also lists ahimsa as in the Gita as one of the qualities we need. But Krishna has taken, in a sense, one creature from all the different animal kingdoms, and those are special. But then I think it makes us more sensitive to or more compassionate to all the creatures in that category. So, for example, Tulsi. Tulsi is, of course, an exalted plant. And yet, by worshiping Tulsi, by taking care of Tulsi, you should become sensitive to the fact that all plants, or the souls in all plants, are ultimately part of Krishna. Or Krishna has taken the cow as probably, I mean, the animal that does the greatest good for human society. I mean, what has a kangaroo done for you lately?
Right.
Or even such relatively evolved creatures as baboons. So, I mean, so clearly, I mean, in the case of the cow, you get milk, yogurt, you get ghee for fire sacrifice. And so the cow is very special. Personally, I can't eat goat cheese or even buffalo cheese. It's just like, ugh. I mean, I know it has certain health benefits, and I don't mean to belittle the poor souls in those bodies. But my own realization is that there's something special about the cow.
Yeah.
And yet Krishna says we must be equal to all creatures, including elephants, dogs. I mean, the dog is not loved as much in India as it is in the West. Although it's funny because as well-to-do Indians, educated Indians sort of adopt everything Western, now you see very respectable Hindus taking their morning walk with their dog, maybe their little poodle Fifi or something. So, but so what was the original question? I want to make sure I'm.
That was amazing. I was asking about its importance historically, like if it was important in any other cultures other than India. Um,
Well, that's why God gave us AI. So you can look that up.
I will, yeah.
So, any other question?
I was wanting to ask you, first of all, I really appreciate your classes, especially when you speak at Krishna House in Gainesville. I'm really inspired by those classes, and to see the young people get inspired by that is really enlivening to me. I'm also, I've received a lot of, guidance from Kalakanta Prabhu.
Oh, Kalakanta.
Yeah,
We've been friends. We've been friends since 1972.
amazing.
I was a young sannyasi, 23-year-old sannyasi. I actually very proud of myself that I was able to take sannyas so many years before I had a prefrontal cortex. So yeah, but I was a young sannyasi, 23 years old, and I was traveling by Prabhupada's instruction. I was traveling around America preaching in colleges, and I went to Portland. And although Kalakanta is from, I think, Albuquerque, New Mexico, but he joined, as Prabhupada said, the cult of Chaitanya and in Portland. And so I met him there, and I really liked him. He was like this sort of like all-American, young boy, and so he even drove me, I think, to some programs.
Wow,
I always appreciated him.
amazing.
Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm also really inspired by him, and yeah, he's really encouraged us to start more prasadam distribution and then potentially a Krishna house here. He says that out of all the places that he's visited, Boise is, because we're so close to the college. He sees that we could do a similar thing that they've done in Gainesville.
Yeah, I actually, Kalakanta and I have been discussing that, and
Mm.
I'm sure you can get very good potatoes there for the prasadam distribution.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So my
All
question
Yeah, go ahead.
to you is, we have our Thursday program that's for college kids and Westerners, and it's going really well and has been for a few years now. And then we have kind of a typical Sunday feast here, that's like, 98% Indian congregation. And I've noticed oftentimes when we bring people from the Krishna Lounge program, or younger people or Westerners, they go to the Sunday feast and we never really see them again.
I think you call that the kiss of death. It's yeah. I mean, the fact is we just want to put aside, I don't know, Vedic political correctness and just speak the truth. The Indians are wonderful devotees. They really are. They're great souls, are wonderful devotees. And the Western people can be wonderful devotees. They have very different cultures. They have very different cultures. And in terms of the basic principles of bhakti yoga, one size fits all. Like everyone should chant Hare Krishna, everyone should read Prabhupada's books and my books, of course. But but in terms of details, like making people comfortable, effectively communicating, speaking to issues they care about, et cetera, and 108 other such points. Uh, they don't mix so much.
Mhm.
I mean, there are Western people who are just born Indophiles. They just love everything Indian, but they're an extremely tiny minority. So, maybe I'll say a word. Actually, I discussed this with Kalakanta. In fact, I just saw him a few days ago. He knew I was leaving Gainesville, so he came by and we had a really good time together. We always have a good time together. But in fact, he took me for a drive in his new driverless, uh, what's that car made by the crazy person? Oh, yeah, Tesla. And so I did. So what I'm about to tell you, I discussed with him, and he was interested in it. So I don't mean any way to be undermining what he taught you. And that is, I think, first of all, I think it's great to reach out to the young people. But ultimately, I mean, we should all recognize anyone who's not sleepwalking through life should understand that ISKCON is facing an existential threat. Prabhupada built up a powerful Western mission, and he made it so clear. He said it over and over again. He personally talked to me about it privately many times. That Prabhupada had a global strategy. As I put it, Prabhupada came to this world for only one reason, to save it. He didn't come to this world for tourism or just because he was sort of a Vaikuntha astronaut that wanted to, explore other worlds. Prabhupada came here as Krishna's intimate representative to save the planet. And he had a strategy. You know what the Hail Mary pass is in football?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like everybody. Do you know what it's?
Yeah. Everybody
Every,
just down
yeah,
and
everybody just runs long. It's like the end of the game.
Oh,
You're going
yeah.
to lose the game. Your only hope is sort of a miracle pass. So everybody just go long, just throw the ball up in the air, and pray to Mary that, you know, the Virgin Mary, that someone catches it. So Prabhupada was very rational and strategic. He was very sociological. Prabhupada was keenly aware of who was joining the movement. And he made some very, what's the word? Frank comments about it.
Mhm.
For example, Prabhupada famously said, "We have the mass, we need the class." Have you heard that?
Mm-mm.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. There used to be a Hare Krishna movement. You know, I mean, the fact that you've never heard that is, I mean, it's not your fault, because I'm sure no one told you. But there's something deeply, deeply wrong that has to be fixed. Because some of the most important things Prabhupada ever said are forgotten, which means that no one thought it was worth their while to tell you that Prabhupada said that,
Mm.
or that you didn't need to know that, even though it's one of the most important things that Prabhupada said. Prabhupada, when Prabhupada was, you know, even materially very, very intelligent and very pragmatic. And so we know what Prabhupada was trying to do because he said it. He said it in lectures, he wrote it in letters to people, he communicated before he came from India, he communicated when he arrived in India, he kept talking about it till the day he left this planet. And yet, no one knows Prabhupada was doing that. You know, it's interesting because you say, like, what does it mean to be the founder Acharya? Prabhupada said, here's a direct quote from Prabhupada, let the neophytes stay in the temple and ring the bells. Prabhupada was a straight shooter. And so Prabhupada, at a certain point, he was very, what's the word, caste conscious.
Mhm.
And I don't mean hereditary caste. That meant nothing to him. In fact, he rejected that. He rejected the idea of hereditary caste. And that's how he started ISKCON, because obviously no Western people were born as Brahmins. So if caste is hereditary, 3 strikes, we're out. But Prabhupada, therefore, he insisted constantly that these castes are determined by qualification. That's what Krishna says. I think it's chapter 4 where Krishna says, Chaturvarnya Mayasrishtam. I've created a system of 4 varnas. Guna karma vibhagasha, according to divisions of quality, the quality of the person, and karma, which, I mean, the basic meaning of the word karma is just action. It has a special meaning, which is, you know, the laws of karma. That's a special meaning. But in the Gita, often Krishna uses it in its more general sense, where it just means action, something that you choose to do. So obviously, the varnas are not by birth, they're by qualification and your ability to actually do the work of that varna. So when Prabhupada, when I say he was very caste conscious, I don't mean in the stupid hereditary way.
Mhm.
I mean, he was very conscious of the quality of the people who were joining, and he even made such heavy comments as many Sudras are joining the movement. He didn't say they're like, you know, little fish, throw them back into the pond. I mean, Prabhupada dedicated himself to saving everyone that came forward. However, Prabhupada analyzed the whole problem in the world was that the Brahmin order had collapsed. You know, all the other parts of your body may work very nicely, but if you are in a coma, if you're unconscious,
Yeah.
then it doesn't matter that your lungs and your heart, everything working. Basically, you do not have, in the real sense, a life. And so Prabhupada said the problem in society now, the reason people are not Krishna conscious, is because there is not an intelligent Varna that is enlightening people, teaching them. And therefore, Prabhupada made it very clear he was coming to the West to put a head on the headless society. And this sort of anatomical simile that the Brahmins are the head of society, the Kshatriyas are the arm, so on, it goes back to the Vedas. It goes back to the oldest Veda, the Rig Veda. It's in Book 10 of the Rig Veda, which is the Purusha Sukta, the prayer to the Purusha. That's why actually in the second canto, there's a chapter entitled Purusha Sukta Confirmed, because the Bhagavatam is giving a commentary on that famous section of the Rig Veda. But in any case, Prabhupada came to put a head on society. That means he came to train people who were intelligent, who were Krishna conscious, that could become the teachers of society. That's what we're supposed to be. And in fact, Lord Chaitanya, as Prabhupada always said, his wife was the goddess of fortune. I mean, you can't do better than that for a wife. His wife was the goddess of fortune, and yet he took sannyas. Why? Because in the society in which he lived, that's how you became recognized as a guru, as a teacher. So Lord Chaitanya did what he had to do to be recognized by the society. So did Krishna. Krishna took birth in a Kshatriya family so that without disturbing the Varna system, he could start cutting off the heads of demons and sort of terminating their demonic existence in other imaginative ways, like with his chakra. So in this age, Krishna did not come as a warrior. We are not authorized to behead people. But in this age, we are supposed to teach. And therefore, Prabhupada was especially concerned to find people who could become powerful teachers, who had the nature of teachers. And of course, if someone doesn't have that nature, they can still render valuable service, because take a university like Boise State. They should have a historical plaque to Radhika and Ramana's brother there on campus. Anyway, that's why I started the academic program in ISKCON in 1991. Actually, I had to legitimize it. It took a lot of discussion with the GBC, with the sannyasis, and so I did that. Well, Krishna did it through me. So Lord Chaitanya, Krishna himself, he took birth as a Kshatriya. Why? Because in the Dwapara Yuga, he had to get rid of all these asuras. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, everyone knows this verse, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. Whenever dharma declines, yada means when, and when you repeat words like that in Sanskrit, yada yada, it means whenever. So whenever dharma declines, abhyutanam, and they're literally an aggressive uprising of adharma. That's literally what it means. Abhyutanam adharmasya. Tada, then atmanam sujamiham, I manifest myself. And what does he do? Paritranaya sadhunam, to save. Basic sadhunam, basically good people, to save good people. Vinashaya cha duskritam, and to red card or whatever, bad people, you're out of the game, which involves such imaginative techniques as beheading them. So that's what Krishna did. Krishna appeared as a Kshatriya, and some of his most intimate devotees, like Arjuna, the Pandavas, the Yadus, in whose family he took birth, they also were Kshatriyas. Because if you look at Krishna Leela and Chaitanya Leela, which are structurally very parallel, in the first stage, for example, Krishna's in Vrindavan. He's in this village surrounded by these loving relatives, and village. It's like a village where everyone's like family, and you get the most intimate pastimes. But having done that for a few years, 10, 11 years, Krishna has to go take care of business. And the business is removing the bad people and saving the good people. And so to do that, he physically did that. He was a Kshatriya. He went to Mathura and then just started, cleaning up the planet physically. So, but again, that's what people respected. You couldn't, in that culture, in Vedic culture, you couldn't just say, okay, you're a bad person, challenge you to a fight. You couldn't do that because no Kshatriya would fight with a Sudra or even a tough Vaishya.
Right.
In fact, that was the argument against Karna when he crashed the graduation ceremony of the Pandavas and just started, for no good reason, was envious of Arjuna. I know that all the mothers in ISKCON, weep over Karna, but they don't really understand the story. I don't literally mean all the mothers. That was hyperbole. A lot of them. So in this age, because Krishna's in the mood of Radharani, he doesn't kill anyone. Because Radharani doesn't kill people. In fact, there's some so-called acharyas who preached actually to ISKCON devotees the unfortunate idea that we're not interested in Krishna or Lord Chaitanya as the preacher. We are interested in relishing the mood of Radha. And so, like we're above all that, which really showed that this person didn't understand our philosophy very well. Because it's in the mood of Radharani that Krishna doesn't kill anybody when he comes to Lord Chaitanya. I mean, when Krishna came as Krishna, the heads were rolling by the thousands. And then you have the same Krishna coming as Lord Chaitanya, and there's actually no violence. The closest it comes to violence is when Lord Chaitanya calls for his chakra. He's going to behead Jagai and Madai, but it doesn't happen. So in each age, Krishna comes in a particular avatar, which signals how you save the planet in this age. So in this age, the very clear signal that Lord Chaitanya sent is we need learned Brahmins by qualification, not birth, who actually teach. That's how you do it in this age. And so someone says, well, I'm not intellectual or I'm not inclined to that. No problem. Because take a modern university, take Boise State University as an example. Since you guys are all in Boise, let's hear it for the locals. So, any major university like Boise State or any other university, thousands of people there are not scholars. In fact, the number of people on the faculty is just a small minority. I know because I live near UCLA and I walk there all the time, sometimes read the school paper. And let's say a university, let's just say 30,000 people. I mean, the faculty is going to be like a small percentage of that. The students are not professors, they're learning. And there is the hospitality staff, their food services, and their grounds, grounds maintenance, and there's security. And there are, just lab technicians that are just helping out. There's all kinds of people. And yet, when you say university, everyone understands it's a place for higher education. Even though thousands of people at any major university are not actually teachers, but they are doing necessary support. Or another example, a hospital. There are the number of people in a hospital who are actually doctors is a small percentage of the hospital staff. I mean, there are people that do, that keep the computers running, people that clean the mop the floor or clean the labs. There are people who do reception. There are all kinds of secretaries in every medical department. And so even though there's thousands of people in a hospital that are not actually doctors or even nurses. Still, when you say hospital, you understand it's a place where they give you terrible food, but also,
Yeah.
um, you know, they do medical work. So in the same way, to say that ISKCON must be known as an educational movement doesn't mean that everyone has to be a scholar. But hospitals have purposes, universities have purposes. ISKCON does not have an overriding purpose. I mean, generally it does. Yeah, we want to save the fallen souls, but Prabhupada told us how to do that. He said that we have to be accepted as a Brahmin class. That's why I went to Harvard. Why? Because I thought, well, maybe people listen to me and maybe I'll know what I'm talking about, when I speak on certain scholarly things. Because it's just what you do nowadays. If I tell people, hi, I'm a celibate monk, can I preach to you? They're going to, God, you're weird. It's,
Yeah,
so it's just what you do. And so ISKCON should be known, must be known if we're ever going to get anywhere outside of India. It has to be known as an educational movement. And if someone, you don't have to be a scholar, but we should all be assisting that effort. And if you can teach, if you can give classes, all the better. So that's one point I wanted to make. It's not just, oh, Boise's a nice city, and we have a nice program. I mean, that's wonderful. It really is great. I'm sure Prabhupada's pleased, but Prabhupada, he told us when we were GBCs, think of the world first. Someone in this poor movement has to be thinking globally and acting locally.
Mhm.
So, so that's one point. We have to understand that what Prabhupada was trying to establish, what his plan was. He wrote down what his strategy was, and the strategy was to put a head on a headless society. And there's a difference between knowing philosophy and knowing the philosophy. Because devotee, I mean, ISKCON has its credo. And, I'm not saying that's bad. I mean, a lot of devotees, if you get first initiation at least, the philosophy, or you get a Bhakti Shastra degree, and that's wonderful. But unfortunately, many of the degree programs in ISKCON prepare you to preach to the choir. In other words, these programs prepare you to preach to the already converted. And what you get out of Prabhupada's books, I'd say to a significant extent, I'm not saying it's the main thing, but to a significant extent, what you get out of Prabhupada's books depends on what you bring to the books. For example, if you just read Prabhupada's books and you know very little about political science, you will say, well, the Vedic system had a monarch. Uh-oh, how are we going to sell that in America? Well, anyway, the way the country's changing, maybe I won't go into that, modern politics. But so if you read Prabhupada's books, you'll just sort of get this simple point that monarchy, Vedic system is monarchy, the political system. And Prabhupada sometimes would say, actually, a number of times, giving an example, the king can do no wrong. Now, if you know something about political science, or if you listen to my talks and send in very generous donations, which will, just kidding. So I've given up on generous donations because of I'm preaching to the Western people. So, but if you know something about political science, you will know that, first of all, there's no such thing as just monarchy. There are different kinds of monarchy. For example, Louis XIV was an absolute monarch, which means all state power was in him, or Henry VIII. And in both cases, it was a disaster. So was Vedic monarchy absolutist? Literally, the king can do no wrong and all powers in the king? No, it's not. It's not at all like that. In fact, what we find in the Mahabharata and in the Bhagavatam is the king could do wrong. An example is when the people in the Kuru kingdom believed that the Pandavas had died in a terrible fire in a house of lac. It wasn't true, but everyone thought it was true. And so how did they respond? And also, everyone already knew that it's that sneaky Duryodhana and his weak father, Dhritarashtra. Everyone knew that. And Vidura probably used his own spies to let everyone know it. So how did people react to that? Did they say, well, don't say anything because, then the king it'll be off with your head. Like say Putin, the absolute dictator in Russia. And if anyone criticizes him, he basically kills them. And he's been doing that for a very long time. So, and of course, we could talk about other monarchs throughout history in Europe and in other parts of the world. China, Japan, I mean, everywhere. But what happened when the people heard that, or they believed that Duryodhana, with his father's sort of looking the other way, but encouraging it, that they'd killed the Pandavas, the people went right to the middle of the town, like the town square, and started heavily criticizing the king. Heavily criticizing the king. Now, what happened to them? Nothing. And not only that, Dhritarashtra said to his son Duryodhana, we have to be a lot more careful because if the people really reject us, they will throw us out of office, basically. There's not the smallest hint that, okay, the way to stop people from criticizing the throne is to kill them, because that was not an option, unless you were a demon like Jarasandha. But for people but that's what Dhritarashtra said. But there was freedom of speech. And another thing there is it was a constitutional monarchy. It wasn't absolute because there are law books called Dharma Shastras. The word Dharma is the most common word in Sanskrit for law with a capital L. And that's why the Bhagavatam says, as Prabhupada used to quote, Dharmam hi sakshat bhagavat pranitam. Dharma is the law that is brought forward, literally brought forth by the Lord. So it's sacred law. And the king had to follow it. He had to follow the law. It was constitutional monarchy. And there was a balance of power. Just like in America, they have this balance of power. Well, we used to have a balance of power. The judicial, the legislative, and the executive. And so there was a very strong balance of power, namely the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas were extremely influential. And so the king was limited by Dharma, law, he was limited by the Brahmanas, and he was limited by public opinion. So if you read Prabhupada's books and you don't know anything about political history or different forms of monarchy, then Vedic monarchy may just look like something you'd better not tell people in classes. But so that's just one example how if you're educated, you will get a lot more out of Prabhupada's books, because when you read the books, you'll understand more what's happening. So now getting to the point where we need more Brahmins, not just Sudras. It's like, imagine this. Imagine you're a doctor and you're trying to save the life of a child who has some serious illness. And in order to save this child, you need to bring into the treatment doctors who are advanced specialists in different fields. Because often a general practitioner will say, well, that's, I'm not really trained. That's not my specialization. So you need specialists. You need certain qualified people to save lives. So in the same way, Prabhupada knew that we need brahmanas, we need intelligent people if we're going to save this planet. And just like if you're a doctor leading a medical team to save a child's life, and someone shows up in the operation theater, and this person is just like, I don't know. Have you ever done anything medical? Well, not really, but always kind of interested in health. It's not a question of saying in an absolute sense that this soul is more important than that soul. But if you're trying to get a job done, let's say I'm driving and God forbid my car breaks down or something, and some devotee pops up and says, "Hi, I can do kirtan over your car." Actually, I can tell a joke. Well, it's a true story, but at my expense. When I was a brahmachari, I joined in Berkeley. Prabhupada sent me to Boston, and so eventually I became the Sankirtan leader and the temple commander. I was just still a young man. It's about 21 years old. So, and that was the biggest temple in the world then because it was ISKCON Press before Prabhupada formed BBT. So we were coming back from the Boston Commons in the van. It's interesting. Someone just sent me a picture of this, our Sankirtan party in the van. There were like 4 or 5 future ISKCON gurus squashed into that van. So, so we got a flat tire, and I was just absorbed in reading Prabhupada's books. So I was just sitting in the van reading the book. So Satsarupa, who was the president, said, Hridayananda, come on, you're in charge. You have to do something about it. So I said, okay, does anyone here know how to fix a flat tire? So some, sort of salt of the earth brahmacharis raised their hand. So I said, okay, go fix the tire. And then I just went back to my book. And I remember Satsarupa was thinking like, oh my God, this is my Sankirtan leader. But Prabhupada was trying to save a planet. He needed people who could be powerful teachers. And therefore, all conditioned souls are not created equal in terms of their usefulness to the Sankirtan, at least right now at this stage. And so the devotees, let's just give an example. Food for Life in ISKCON has falsely become this mandatory program like Mongol Arti or something. The fact is, Prabhupada never asked us to do that everywhere. There's one strand, and I'll tell you why it's problematic. It's one day in Mayapur, Prabhupada was standing on his balcony, and he saw poor villagers from the area going through our garbage because we were cooking for hundreds and thousands and throwing some stuff away because whatever. And so Prabhupada was moved by that. And he said, no one within 10 miles of our temple should go hungry, and therefore start a program to give them prasadam. He never said to do it all around the world. And in America, for example, it's very, very rare indeed, if almost never, that someone actually starves to death, not because maybe they're mentally unwell and just kind of lock themselves in an apartment and starve to death, but you say a person that really wants to live but can't find food. That basically doesn't happen in this country. So how did it become this like regulative principle, which Prabhupada never asked for? And what's the problem with the fact that it's become like this standard program? Okay, first of all, how it became falsely seen as something you do, like going to Arctic or selling books. How did it get that status far beyond the status Prabhupada gave to it? Because something happened in Guyana, Jonestown. And I'll tell you, actually, I want to see exactly when that happened and how that led to Food for Life becoming uh let's see, that was 1978. And that's very significant. It was November 18th, almost exactly 1 year after Prabhupada, after Prabhupada left this world. Now, why was that so important to ISKCON? Because up until Jonestown, that were, where these cult members all committed suicide or were, forced to take poison at gunpoint. Um, a lot of people in America, most people I'd say, thought we were really weird.
Mm.
Their shaved heads and our men wearing skirts and, women dressing very chastely, covering their heads, but the mid part of their body kind of looked like belly dancers. So anyway, we were really bizarre. And with all due respect to the fruit of workers, we were bizarre. And even there's a quote from Prabhupada where, and this is in Veda based, by the way, where a brahmachari asked Prabhupada, why do we wear these clothes? And Prabhupada said, why? Because you wanted to. I never said you had to do it. That's in Veda base. Here's another quote from Prabhupada available. In fact, I can send you a copy of my essay on this, where Prabhupada says, we are not interested in dress. Dress is a dead thing. We are interested in consciousness, living consciousness. So anyway, I've written essays. You can find them on hdgoswami.com, free. And I mean, there's pages of quotes. I've given pages of quotes of Prabhupada saying he doesn't care how you dress. I mean, what he did care about is dress like a lady or a gentleman. You may even say, why did Prabhupada bring saris back for the women in San Francisco? Why? Because it was the hippie days and women would literally, obviously not initiated women, during the kirtan, they would get so enthusiastic, they just strip naked, just to sort of maybe get in touch with their nature or something. I mean, I was out when I was just a new devotee. I've been in the movement maybe, well, not that, maybe like 4 months or something, which was kind of an older devotee then. And so I took out one Sunday morning, I took a Harinam party out to the Berkeley campus. And so we were just, playing, I was playing the drum, leading the kirtan. And then this hippie girl came, and it was apparent that she was wearing kind of like this, what do you call them? Kind of like one piece of women put it on, and it just like goes down to your knees or something, like one
Uh,
goes from your shoulders to your knees.
oh, a poncho? No.
Yeah, something, but that simple dress.
Mm.
And it became apparent that that was all she was wearing. And then she started, her body language was very explicit. As she got to the kirtan, she prepared to uh,
Take it
remove,
off.
remove that piece of clothing. And I saw her go for it, and and so I just said to the brahmacharis, close your eyes, everybody. I sort of, in a very commanding tone. So we all, I mean, I hope they close their eyes. I closed my eyes. I actually cannot verify that they did close their eyes. But she did it. I mean, the last thing I saw just before my eyes closed were, it was the upsweep of her single piece of cloth. And then and of course, obviously, I think that wasn't exactly the attention she was looking for. So, and then after a minute or two, I just kind of looked and she was gone. But that's what it was like back then. I mean, some of the greatest leaders in ISKCON history, Prabhupada disciples, some of the most famous devotees, they were living in this hippie ashram in Northern California, and it was kind of like a nudist ashram. I mean, not all the time, but it was. So that's what Prabhupada was dealing with.
Mhm.
And so he just brought some saris, at least here, cover yourself. But the idea that a sari or a dhoti, a spiritual dress, is actually comically absurd because it's not mentioned in any shastra. Prabhupada never said it's spiritual dress. So what's holding back the movement is that so many of the things we do and teach people are not actually they're not actually Vedic principles. And so getting back to my point that we're supposed to, so Prabhupada was very concerned about who was joining the movement. And he made some very heavy statements, such as we have the mass, we need the class. So that means that we're making a lot of devotees, but they're kind of, we're not going to throw them back like a little fish, but it's not, we're not going to be successful. And of course, those people are souls. Of course, we welcome them, but it's not going to work. ISKCON will not be successful if we keep making people on that level. Now, the really interesting thing about this is that I don't think there was a single person, I never met one, in ISKCON that thought for a moment Prabhupada's talking about me. So when Prabhupada said we have the mass, we need the class, everybody's looking around to see what other person, not themselves, was in the mass category. But Prabhupada was right because you know that song, I don't know if you know that song, that old folk song, Where Have All the Flowers Gone?
Oh,
Where
yeah.
have all the flowers gone?
Mhm.
Well, it's like, where have all the Prabhupada disciples gone? So, because Prabhupada knew this, he said, we don't want stars, we want a moon. He also said, what was it? It was you have to churn the milk. You get less milk, but it's sweeter. In Prabhupada in India, when they first went back to India, because when Prabhupada first went there, and they were always doing Harinam, Prabhupada was maybe even expecting it would be like America. But at that point in India, the society was so conservative that no respectable family would ever let their child join an ashram. Because the reputation of Vaishnavas or people doing Harinam in India was they're beggars. They're low class, very low class people who are just begging. And so, a respectable Indian family let your daughter live in a house with men she's not married to and go out on the street. It was like,
Mhm.
I mean, it was just like, God forbid. And so the result was that Prabhupada couldn't make devotees in India as he did in the West, even though he's getting, 20,000 people to his programs in these, big venues. And people would give donations. So therefore, Prabhupada, he was so, what's the word, agile. He said, people are joining. So instead of just doing what we do in the West, we'll make life members. We'll get respectable people to buy membership in ISKCON. You get all my books, you get this and that. And so the Life Member Program attracted a lot of the most important, influential, the richest people in India. And then eventually, when they joined and other things happened, India started becoming more and more Western. It became possible to recruit devotees, young devotees from respectable families. But the point is, it wasn't at first. So how do you attract? How do we put ahead on society? If you say, and it's not just a mystical answer. Yes, go out on the street in these weird clothes and jump around, and everything will happen. It's not happening. It hasn't been happening for at least 40 years. It's just not happening. It's not working. And Prabhupada explained why it's not working. And what he said was perfectly matches the Gita. What Prabhupada said is that all of you, he said that. This is a quote from Prabhupada I used in a talk I gave for the North American RGB, that all of you were devotees in your past life. And Krishna says, I'll read you, God, you really need to understand these things. I mean, you're young people, you're intelligent. I mean, almost everybody looks young to me now. So, okay, let me get the Gita out. Because if you don't understand this, you're not really going to be valuable to help save Prabhupada's mission, which actually needs saving. Because it's very rapidly, I mean, it's basically has become an Indian movement with some Western programs, and that's accelerating. And as a sociologist, the way I know it's accelerating is just look at who the new sannyasis and gurus are. See who the new candidates are to become sannyasis and gurus, and you will see the future leaders of this movement. And it's almost 100% Indian, the few exceptions. And so the Indianization of ISKCON is accelerating. In fact, it's already, and so you can say, well, is this racism? No, no, it's not racism. One time, an American devotee said to Prabhupada, in Delhi, there's a place in Delhi, sort of Connaught Circus, where all these young Americans and Europeans go. Prabhupada said, then go to India, go to America if you want to preach them. I mean, obviously now there are millions of Hindus in America. Many of them are very good people. Many of them are very good souls. They join ISKCON. That's wonderful. I'm not saying stop Indians from joining ISKCON because they're great souls. They're wonderful people, and they have as much right as anyone on earth, maybe more right, to serve in ISKCON. So that's not the point. What we have in ISKCON, a large Indian congregation, is a blessing. What we don't have is the problem. And so the problem is, and that's why I turn to these Gita verses, there are all these philosophical mistakes in the Hare Krishna movement that are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. And I think unless devotees start cluing in, it's not going to happen. Let me give you a little list of serious philosophical mistakes that are crippling the Sankirtan movement directly. One philosoph, where'd he go? Uh-oh, hope I didn't scare him away.
I'm sorry, just taking my phone, sorry.
Oh, I thought you were just like, I've had enough of this. Okay, so
I'm with you.
okay. So you probably heard this. Sorry if this is a rerun for you. It's kind of like a Vedic I Love Lucy rerun or something. But anyway, so causeless mercy, completely misunderstood in the Hare Krishna movement. Philosophically misunderstood. Because people think, here's a typical thing a devotee will say, I was so fallen, I didn't deserve to get this mercy. It was just causeless mercy. The only problem with it is that that's not our philosophy. And I'll explain why. First of all, let's go to the Sanskrit for causeless mercy. The word causeless is the word that's basically the most used word is ahaituki. The word ahaituki, well, it originally comes from the word hetu. Hetu means a cause. And then something that has a cause is haituka. It has a hetu. And the feminine is haituki. And if you say not like ahaituki bhakti, bhakti, it doesn't have a cause. But you have to understand what the word cause means there. What the word cause means there is that it doesn't have a selfish motive. Think of the connection between two words, which obviously come from the same root, motive and motor. So a motive is something that drives you, that leads you to do something because you have a motive. Like, for example, in I think it's verse 246 in the Gita, where Krishna says, Karmanyeva dikaraste. this is the only place in the Gita where Krishna uses the word adhikara, which means a right, like human rights, adhikara. And that's why householders were called adhikari. They still use that in ISKCON? Adhikari?
Not that I.
God, I mean, I
Oh.
guess you have to just, someone should go and sweep up the remnants of what Prabhupada taught us. So, adhikara, is that 246, karma nieva?
No.
Oh my God, don't tell anyone. I'll pay you not to tell anyone. I'll tell you which verse it is.
It's 47.
247. Okay, I was close.
Yes,
Thank you. So if you, if you look at that verse, karmani eva, eva means well. Let me see how it's. I don't know how it's translated there, but because I'll give you a very literal translation. Let's see, 247. I'll say yeah, karmani eva. Prabhupada translates karmani in prescribed duties. That's literal. Eva. Actually, Ava not only means certainly, it also, the first meaning in the dictionary is alone, like only in action. Only, and there in your duty, adhikara means your right. It's like human rights. That you have a right only to do your duty. And then Krishna says, ma phaleshu, which means you never have a right to the fruits. Actually, ma means not, and kadachana. In Sanskrit, the way you say never is you say not ever. So kadachana means at some time, at some point. And na kadachana means at no point. Just like, for example, anyway, I won't go into all grammar now. It's interesting. So you have a right only to do your duty. You never have a right to the fruit. And ma karma phala hetu bur, which is the BBT kind of mistranslated it. Where he says never, where it's translated there, the BBT editing, which they missed, never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities. That's not actually not literally what it means in Sanskrit. Here, and this is the point I was making. Prabhupada, he expected the Sanskrit editors to catch these things, but they missed a bunch of stuff. Anyway, it doesn't change our philosophy, so it's not like, oh my God, I thought, now I don't even know what our philosophy is. It's not like that. But what that means is never be a person for whom, never have a selfish motive in doing your work. Karma, again, means your duty. Never do your duty with a selfish motive. It's exactly what Lord Chaitanya said, na dhanam na janam na sundarim, and so on. I don't want wealth. Never, in other words, never have a selfish motive. And in the false ego sense, like I'm the doer. So never, let's see, never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities. Ma karma phala hetu bur. So that translation is not wrong, but especially means never be motivated. Don't seek the fruits of your work, and then mate sango sukarmani, and do not be attached to inaction. Because if you think look at the last two lines, they go together. Because in other words, the last two lines are describing boga tyaga. If I can't enjoy my work, if I can't take credit for my work, then I won't do it. So that's why Krishna says, don't think you are the doer. And when you realize you're not the doer, then don't give up your duty. So the last two lines of the 247 are rejecting boga tyaga. But the reason I mention this is because hetu means the motive. The motive. So ahaituki bhakti, or causeless devotion, means no selfish motive. Like in those. So anyway, So, so now when you say causeless mercy, the way that Chaitanya Charitamrita explains causeless mercy is it means the person giving the mercy has no selfish motive. Like typically, don't make disciples because you want followers. Don't make disciples because you want an income stream. Like Lord Chaitanya says, don't nadanam. He rejects wealth. Najanam, which means followers. The Sundarim, and don't become a guru so you can just enjoy a lot of women, which virtually every so-called guru besides Prabhupada did in the 60s. So that's what it means. So when it means, well, here's a story. This is a true story. I have on extremely reliable evidence that Prabhupada was giving a little darshan in Los Angeles, and Vishnujana Swami was there. And so, God, I wish you guys could have met Vishnujana. He was really a great guy. Anyway, so Prabhupada praised Vishnujana, you're doing a very nice service. And then he said, that's just your mercy, Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada said, no, I offer my mercy to everyone, but you took it.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
and so this idea that I deserve to be born as a crippled grasshopper drowning in, I don't know, camel urine or something, there's almost like a competition sometimes in ISKCON to come up with the, cleverest, degraded thing that you really deserved. But that's not what it is. That's what causeless mercy means. The person teaching you, giving you mercy doesn't have selfish motives. Now, let's go to those verses in the Gita, chapter 6. The way this discussion begins in chapter 6 is that Arjuna is worried, and he says to Krishna earlier in that chapter, yati. Yati means a practitioner, spiritual practitioner. So the word ayati means someone that fell down from their practice. And that's what Arjuna says, ayati shadayo peto, and so on. What happens to someone who had faith, who was sincere in Krishna consciousness, but fell down from the practice? What happens to that person? And then Krishna assures him, don't worry, Arjuna, that no one who does good ever goes on a bad path. And then Krishna says, not only that, they'll go up to heavenly planets, Ushitwa Shashwati Sama, and enjoy up there just for innumerable years. And then they'll come back to this planet. And then what happens when they come back? They'll take a good birth. Suchinang Simatang Gehe Yoga Brasta Abhijayate. They'll take birth in a family that has money and a lot of leisure time, or pious family. And now let's go to 643. And this is what happens to the person. And this, as Prabhupada explained, is the real reason why many people joined the Hare Krishna movement back in the day. It wasn't about, misunderstanding causeless mercy, that, okay, you didn't. First of all, if there was such a thing as causeless mercy, that means you don't deserve it, but I just gave you the mercy. That would contradict many verses in the Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna explicitly rejects it in verse 1728. Verse 1728, Krishna says, any religious activity you perform, if you're not really conscious and don't really believe in what you're doing, it's useless. Not only is it useless, it's useless in this life or the next, and the next. Yeah. And Prabhupada translates it there, useless. So how is it if people touch books, or people just walk by and hear the Harinam, or they take prasadam, and they don't have faith in these things? And Krishna says, whatever you do in religious or spiritual life, which you don't really believe in, is useless in this life and the next. So there is an answer to this riddle, but it's not the answer that almost all devotees in ISKCON think it is. And because they're getting the wrong answer, it's crippling Prabhupada's movement. So I'm going to try to defend those statements. There is such a thing as, and also what's the word? Agyata sukriti, unknown good deed. Like, okay, you ate a sweet ball. You don't know what the heck it is. You're just hungry. But unknown to you, that was prasadam. Or you just think those are the Hare Krishnas, banging away on Main Street. You just walk by, but unknown to you, the sound went in your ear. Or you bought a book and you're one of the fortunate people that didn't throw it away because the only reason you bought it is you were sort of strong-armed by the devotee salesperson. So what's going on here? Krishna directly says useless. And yet Prabhupada said there are benefits. So we'll go over the verses where Krishna explains it, how both things can be true. But you do have to think. Not a wildly popular activity, but necessary nonetheless. So if you look at 643, do you have it there? Can anyone?
Yes.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, or I'll explain to you. I'll read it literally. Nalini already knows these things. Actually, Nalini, you could give the class. Tu podías dar la clase. By the way, I have to say this. I know I'll get in trouble for saying this, but Nalini is a wonderful devotee. And she's an architect from Argentina. Smile, Nalini. She just spent she's really an amazing devotee because she spent 3 months assisting me in Gainesville and didn't jump off the balcony. So even after 3 months of having to assist me. So I said it, can't take it back. Can't unring the bell. So if you look at 643, where Krishna has just said that a devotee that fell down, went up to heaven, got all kinds of rewards, now has come back to the earth in a nice birth. And then Krishna says 643 tatra means therein. In other words, in that situation. Tang buddhi sang yogam labate. He or she regains buddhi sang yogam. Yoga, yoga means spiritual practice. Sang yogam, like in Sankirtan, means all together. So sam as a prefix in Sanskrit can mean all together, or it can mean very strong, like everything's there. And by the way, we still have sang, like Sankirtan, still have it in English. You should be able to spot it. It came, the prefix sam came to the West through Greece, where they pronounced an S. I'm sorry. But they pronounced it S-Y, they spelled it S-Y-N, like synthesis, the together thesis. So the sang in Sankirtan is in English all over the place. Sanskrit, as I always say, is like just everywhere in English, there's Sanskrit, if you know how to look for it. But anyway, so sang yoga means very strong connection with God. And Krishna, and but here it's Buddhi Sang Yoga in 643 means a very strong connection with spiritual philosophy, with spiritual understanding. Just like in 10:10, where Krishna says, Teshang Satata Juktana, for those who are always devoted to me with love, I give them buddhi.
Intelligence.
Dadami buddhi yogantam. I give them buddhi yoga, which means the practice of spiritual rationality. And even in 239, Krishna says the whole process that we're engaged in, philosophy and practice, is actually buddhi. It is spiritual reason. Devotees are supposed to be rational, intelligent. So if you look at, and if we emphasize philosophy as much as we emphasize rituals, something might actually happen. You know what they say in law enforcement, follow the money trail and you'll find the rat. And so simple question I always ask, and I ask it as a faithful member of ISKCON, how much money does ISKCON spend on rituals, building huge temples and everything? And how much money does ISKCON spend on schools? In Europe, for example, there are many schools, devotee schools, or maybe none. In Latin America, where there are thousands of devotees, there are many schools, or maybe none. I mean, the Avanti schools are very nice, but it's not explicitly, to make people devotees. In America, we're luckier. There are actually, there's, in terms of just devotee school, there's one in Alachua and a very good one in Dallas, which has been under the leadership of excellent devotee Nritya Kishori. So, but in any case, so there in that situation, a person tried to be Krishna conscious, they're faithfully practicing, fell down from their practice, went up to heaven, got like this unlimited Swarga credit card, and they could, you can enjoy like, and then they come back here to earth. Now what happens? Krishna says, Tatra, in that situation, they regain their strong connection, Sangyoga with Buddhi, spiritual intelligence. And now here's the real point. That intelligence, spiritual understanding is Purva Dehikam. It comes from their previous body. That is the Agyata Sukriti. Purva Dehikam means from the Purva Deha, from the previous body. In fact, previous is actually Purva in English. So, so it's not because of Agyata Sukriti. I mean, it is Agyata because when we joined the movement, we didn't know we were devotees in the past. But that's the Agyata part, the unknown part. And then Krishna says, Yetate cha tato bhuya. Again, the person endeavors. And the word yetate, again, endeavors, is the same word that Krishna, with Arjuna asked, where he says, ayati. Ayati is the person that does the action of yetate. So one thing which I find fascinating in the Gita is that it's very tight. It's like if you look at two disciplined philosophers, they use very precise language. They repeat the words the other said. It's very tight, precise language. It's exactly what you find in the Gita. In the BBT edition, you'll find the same word, even in the same sentence, translated in different ways. But if you look at the Sanskrit, you see how precise the philosophy is. So, and then again, person endeavors for the highest perfection, Kurunandana. Then look at 644. Krishna's emphasizing the reason you became a devotee is because of your previous practice. And Krishna says the first word, purvabhyasena, by previous practice. The word abhyasa in Sanskrit in the Gita is an older way of saying sadhana. In Lord Chaitanya's movement, we use the word sadhana, practice, spiritual practice. You won't find sadhana in the Gita. The word used is abhyasa, which can literally mean repetition. That's what practice is. Whether you're practicing how to play the clarinet or how to be a pure devotee. So therefore, Krishna says, it is by your previous practice. That's why you came to the movement. Not because you took prasadam and like sort of the Harry Potter sampradaya, it just kind of like magically changed your brain. The Bhagavad Gita teaches that we voluntarily, using our free will, choose Krishna. It's not magic. It's not that we can just manipulate people. Hare Krishna, welcome and join the party. I'm sort of giving examples of all the 10 offenses against the holy name. So what the Gita teaches is that people choose Krishna, even if their motives are not pure, Chaturvidha bhajante mam. But you choose. At the end of the Gita, Krishna says, Kacharita Chutan Parta, did you hear what I said? Tvayaika Grena Chetasa, were you actually paying attention? Were you fully focused? That's what it actually means in Sanskrit. Did you hear what I said? Were you fully focused? And so what are you going to do? And then Arjun said that you persuaded me. Karishe vachanam. I will carry out your command. So the process that's taught in the Bhagavad Gita is that a soul who understands Krishna explains it to another soul, and hopefully that person chooses by an act of free will to at least try to understand Krishna, or at least to take another step forward. It's not magical. It's not Harry Potter. And so what is a Gyata Sukriti? Because that's what everyone in ISKCON believes. They just eat prasadam. That can work if you have a background. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that, what is that verse? Neha bikamanashosti. This endeavor is never lost. Pratyavayo navidyate. It never diminishes. Swalpam api, even very little, asya dharmasya, of this spiritual process. Hriyate, trayate yavasho, no, trayate mahato vaya. It saves you from the greatest danger. And by the way, the word bhaya, often translated fear, it also means danger. So bhaya can mean fear, but it also means the thing that provokes fear, the danger. So anyway, Krishna says, it is by your previous practice, 644. And then he says, Tenaiva, which means by that alone. By that alone. And he says, Hriyate. You know the word Hari, the one who takes away our miseries? Any of you heard that? It's from the root Hri. Actually, the root is pronounced her, but the poor vowel R. The poor vowel R is just like one of the most abused members of the Hare Krishna movement. Everyone pronounces it like R-I. It's like the English word her. The vowel is the R, her. Or bird, the vowel is the R. Or curd, the vowel is the R. So it's Krishna. Anyway, so Krishna says it is by your previous practice and by that alone. That hriyate, you're just literally taken away. You're just sort of, carried away. Avasha, almost involuntarily. Even though whoop, there go my friends. Whoops, there go my family. But still, you're just sort of carried away back because it's by your previous practice. You did this before. That's the unknown good deed. The unknown good deed, like a Jamila. He had forgotten that he was an advanced devotee.
Yeah.
And then Krishna says at the end of the last line of 644, Jigyasurapi Yogasya, and you want to learn about spiritual life. Why? Because you are taking up where you left off in the past. And Prabhupada confirmed this. He said, all of my disciples were devotees in their past life. The problem is, and I've heard this so many times from older devotees, Prabhupada disciples, devotees went out and just chanted on the street. It worked for me. Yeah, but Prabhupada said it's because you were devoted in your past life. I'm not saying we shouldn't chant Krishna's names in public, but time, place, and manner. Twice in the Bhagavatam, one time Bhishma says it. Or no, I'm sorry, on the bed of arrows, it said about Bhishma. He's glorified as being Deshakala Vibhagavit, someone that knows the differences of time and place. And then when Narada is instructing Dhruva, he tells him, in order to worship Krishna, you have to know the differences of time and place. Prabhupada says, I could read you all the purports, you look at my papers, where Prabhupada says that someone who was devotees who are puffed up with false ideas think that in America, everything has to be done like in India. Puffed up with concocted notions. That's what he says. That's chapter 4th canto, chapter 5, verse 48. There's so many purports. It's like, I've written an essay about this, Understanding Prabhupada. You can bury these people alive with quotes from Prabhupada, and they won't get it. They still think, well, you have to do it this way. We're talking about superficial things. So Rupa Goswami in chapter 6 of the Nectar of Ocean says there are fundamental principles you cannot change, like chant Hare Krishna or accept a guru. And there are details that you must change to be relevant.
Mm.
And so we have, unfortunately, a lot of very senior people in leading positions who often can't make this distinction. So they take details to be basic principles. Yes.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So the reason why this is important, the misunderstanding and the misconception of Jatu Sukriti or causeless mercy, the reason why this is important is because if you don't understand that, it's like blind faith, or it's almost kind of, you know,
Yes. You're
atheist.
taking you're taking something which Krishna says is useless and you're betting the family farm on it. In other words, the Western Hare Krishna movement is in a crisis. Prabhupada said, if you can't increase what I gave you, at least maintain it. We failed to do that. Any scholar, any legitimate scholar that studies, the sociology and the history of new religious movements will say ISKCON is in a crisis. ISKCON is given as an example by scholars who are not envious. They're just scholarly, and they say that ISKCON is a very good example of a movement that had all the resources to become a powerful, successful movement in the West, but unfortunately failed. Prabhupada's plan to save this planet was a powerful Western movement, especially in America. There is no powerful American Hare Krishna movement. There are very good devotees, like Kalakanta, he's an excellent devotee, and other people, they're doing valuable service. But in terms of a strong Western Hare Krishna movement, it doesn't exist. It's kind of like, the medical term phantom limb?
Yes.
It's like let's say someone's leg is amputated, but it still itches. I mean, it hurts. In other words, they still have the pains and pleasures as if they had a leg, but they don't. So there's a phantom Western Hare Krishna movement. I mean, obviously there is. I mean, I indulge myself in a little bit of hyperbole for effect. I mean, obviously there is, but it's nothing like when Prabhupada was here, despite the fact they're very good devotees. Kostuba and Raghunath, excellent devotees, a very nice program. Kalakanta is an excellent devotee with a nice program. But it's kind of like islands in a sea of very limited things.
Mhm.
And if you go to the main Hare Krishna center in any major American city, we know what you're going to find. What you find there is good, basically almost all people of Indian background. That's wonderful. So it's not what you find that's the problem, it's what you don't find.
Mm.
And there's an old saying, don't try to be more Catholic than the Pope.
Yeah.
And so you have like ships passing in the night. You have Prabhupada saying over and over and over again, you don't have to wear these clothes. Just, wear whatever works, at least be a lady or gentleman, dress decently, and just do whatever works. And you have to find a way to reach the Western people. And then you have, to give an example, the first temple that Prabhupada actually purchased, the first owned property in ISKCON was the Los Angeles Temple, New Dwarka. And so Prabhupada kept emphasizing, because the devotee said, okay, we'll put a big like Hindu or Vaishnava temple facade on it. Prabhupada said, no, I want it to look like a church. Because then Americans will feel comfortable there. The devotees wanted to take out the pews of the church and put the deities in what do the Christians call it, the sanctuary. The big,
Yeah.
in other words, where the deities are now in Los Angeles. Prabhupada rejected that. So the fact that the deities are in that particular space is because they rejected, not the current leaders, Jayatirtha, who didn't end well. But anyway, They rejected. He simply explicitly disobeyed Prabhupada. And Prabhupada had designed a beautiful temple room in where they put the museum later. And I guess what they would call in a church like the what do they call it? Not the activity room, but the
Parish hall.
yeah, parish hall. They have different words where they, have serve out food, or they have club meetings, where they have their just church related activities. And so, and Prabhupada personally designed the temple. So there you get a good example of Prabhupada trying to make ISKCON more Western and his Western disciples trying to make it more Indian. When they started to build the Vrindavan temple, the architect, Surabhi Swami, he asked Prabhupada if they should just do a typical like Vaishnav architecture. Prabhupada said, no, it should also be American architecture. In other words, Prabhupada, that's why they had flush toilets, in Mayapur in the buildings. Prabhupada was doing everything in his power to make Western people comfortable, and his so-called followers did everything in their power to make Western people uncomfortable, based on the myth of Vedic culture. I'll explain now that I've got your attention, I'll explain what I mean by that. By culture there, I mean ethnicity. If by culture you mean dressing a certain way, cooking a certain way, a certain kind of architecture, a certain musical style, which is Vedic music, Vedic architecture, Vedic cuisine, that is simply your imagination. There's no historical evidence, there's no Shastra evidence. In fact, if you do the research, what you'll find is that even in Vrindavan temples, there are a lot of Muslim architectural features. Just like in, let's say, Western temples, there are a lot of Western architectural features. So the food, I mean, people think, well, this is what you have to offer to Krishna. This is what Krishna likes because it's like a Vedic food. Yeah, and as I always say, who would have guessed that Krishna was so fond of Turkish food? Yeah, like halava. It's a Muslim word. It's a Muslim preparation. I mean, so many things. You like wake up and smell the kofta. I mean, so many, or like, for example, we make subjis, and this is the only food that Krishna wants. Yeah, Krishna, it turns out, was very fond of South American vegetables that didn't even exist in India. Not only when Krishna was there, they didn't exist. They didn't exist when Lord Chaitanya was there, such as tomatoes and potatoes. Kind of like the bedrock Vedic subject. So basically, ISKCON is sort of, what's the word? Giving people all this mythology. Or, for example, that devotional dress, another imagination. Yes?
I was thinking about this dress code thing that you're speaking to, how it's not a Vedic, it's not really in the Shastras that we should wear
No.
saris, we should wear dhoti. And I simply have reflected about that a lot regarding how I dress. And, coming from America, I used to dress, like I'd wear, skinny jeans and, tight clothing and short shirts. And so, yeah, compared to that, I mean, I guess what
Okay, I get it. I understand the point. I want to respond to that. And thank you for sharing that. And I mean, I know that you're intelligent and sincere. So therefore, I'm not going to hold back.
Sure. Oh, please, I'm not scared.
I'm scared that I'm going to go too far. Anyway, it's devotees have confused, and I mean like most devotees in the world have confused two very different things. One is an ethnic detail. Another is a cultural principle. I learned when I was just a young boy, as a child, that if you go to a house of God, which is in the Vedas, Deva Griha, a house of God. If you go to a house of God, you take a shower, you wear nice clothes, you show respect, and you show reverence by the way you dress. I learned that as a kid, like when I was, 6 or 7 years old. And so there are cultural principles, then there are ethnic details. I mean, it's like, for example, one of the most, and many devotees have realized this, one of the most bizarre things ever are chaste Hare Krishna ladies covering their head down to their nose and then, and exposing half of their body.
Mhm.
And I remember, there were some young girls born in the movement who really knew how to work the system. It's like, okay, I'm wearing devotional dress, but it's like
Yeah.
little left to the imagination. The plunging neckline, the plunging waistline. And also in India, there are, I mean, prostitutes wear saris in India.
Right.
So the point is that we can't compare apples with tractors or, you know what I mean? I mean, so if you want to compare chaste Indian dress, it's not Vedic, there's nothing Vedic about it. If you want to compare chaste Indian dress with uh, promiscuous Western dress, India wins. What happens when you compare chaste Western dress with promiscuous Indian dress? The
Yeah.
Choli and Sari. So I mean, your desire to be chaste is admirable. It shows that you are a respectable human being, that you have self-respect, that you're intelligent, that you're not a fool.
Right.
And the point is, in my view, you can be just as chaste, uh, Western dress, and this is an interesting thing where I have a place in LA, family apartment, which has been kindly given to me. And it's in a really nice area, and it's walking distance to UCLA, which is one of the top-rated public universities probably in the world. And it's California, so everything is woke and blah 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 and all that. But what I've noticed is that even at UCLA, more and more women. I've noticed not only in the university, but I've noticed just walking around LA. This is like very, neighborhood. People are educated. They all vote Democratic and all that. But I've noticed more and more women are wearing long skirts or some pants or dressing chastely. Why? Because that's the real female empowerment. Just making yourself like a stupid little doll for stupid men is
Yeah.
hardly liberation.
Yeah.
And so again, the cultural principle is women and men should dress in a respectable way, in a way that does not in any way point to the wrong part of their bodies. And that's a cultural principle. To say a sorry, that's an ethnic detail.
Yeah. Well, honestly, and do we call you Acharya Dave, or would we call you?
Yeah, I'll tell you. I'll explain that also. God, reminds me of that George Harrison song. I want to tell you, my head is full of things to say. So, Maharaj, which means
Yeah.
great king,
Yeah.
the Latin would be actually from the Sanskrit Magna Rex. So, anyway, in Shastra, no one ever calls a sannyasi Maharaj. It's just like it's just there is no such thing.
Did
Maharaj,
you call Prabhupada
no, we call
Srila
Prabhupada.
Prabhupada Maharaj?
Well, I mean, Prabhupada used terms like Guru Maharaj because, he couldn't change everything in India because he had to sort of, I mean, people criticize him, stupid people criticize him enough. So he sort of kept a certain basic culture. But Prabhupada also said, actually, I want to read this to you. And because it's really important. These are Prabhupada's words. This is fourth canto, chapter 8, text 54. See. So our Krishna consciousness movement is going on throughout the entire world, and we install deities in different centers. Sometimes our Indian friends, and the worst, I mean, the worst ones are the white Indians. Sometimes our Indian friends, puffed up with concocted notions, criticize this has not been done, that has not been done, but they forget this instruction of Narada Muni to one of the greatest Vaishnavas, Dhruva. One has to consider particular time, country, and conveniences. What is convenient in India may not be convenient in the Western countries. So the word, as you know, Maharaj means great king. To be honest, because I'm more or less fluent in Sanskrit, like when people say, "Hey, great king," I'm thinking like, seriously?
Hmm.
It's just, I mean, imagine if someone just walked up to you, just every while your friend said, "Great queen, could I talk to you?" I mean, it's bizarre. And I mean, at least the way it sounds to me. The reason I adopted the term Acharya Deva, thus causing great misery and gnashing of teeth among the GBC. The reason I use that is because Prabhupada said I should use it. When I first started my illustrious guru career in 1978, and literally I'd only been a guru for about 3 or 4 weeks, and so I was Balavanta, the GBC of the Southeast, asked me to be the guru for his zone. So anyway, I went to Gainesville and I was giving a Sunday Bhagavatam class. And Gainesville on Sunday, as many temples did, would give the class in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think even Prabhupada would do that. So it was Adi Leela, chapter 1, text 46. And the purport, Prabhupada basically says that a bona fide guru who's actually following Lord Chaitanya Gaura is called Acharya Dev. That's just the word for a bona fide guru. And the word Acharya, I'll explain it to you. I want to tell you, my head is full of things to say. So the word acharya comes from the verb char, which means to act or move in a certain way. And achara means behavior. Behavior like sadachara means, spiritual behavior. And it's just like in English. For example, a mother may say to her child, behave yourself. Now, the child could say, well, technically anything I do is behavior.
Right.
But that's not what she meant. Behave yourself means behave nicely. Same thing in Sanskrit. Achara can simply mean behavior, but it also means proper behavior. And acharya means one whose behavior should be emulated. So it means a teacher. That's how you say professor in Sanskrit. It's one of the main ways, the only way, but it just means a teacher. So, and in later Sanskrit, not in the Bhagavatam Sanskrit, the way they sort of indicate the adjective spiritual is they put a suffix on a word, the word deva. So Guru Deva. And the reason they put that suffix on Guru Deva is because in India, if you have a wrestling coach, he's Guruji.
Mhm.
One time I arrived in the Delhi airport and back when it was just total mayhem, and they had a whole hierarchy. Like the lowest people would meet you as you walked out on the sidewalk and try to literally drag you over to a taxi operated by the person they worked under. And I noticed that when the sort of the finder, dragged me and another devotee over to the taxi, that this guy was very low class in India addressed the taxi driver as Guruji. And of course, taxi driver is subordinate to the person at the gate that checks, and everything's all right. So in India, guru just means a teacher. It can be anything, a wrestling coach, can be a cooking teacher, anything.
Yeah.
So when you add the suffix deva, it specifically means a spiritual teacher or a spiritual guru. So in the same way, acharya, I mean, someone that just teaches grammar can be an acharya. Just like, for example, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. he was an acharya before he became a Vaishnava because he was a teacher. He was a professor of grammar. He was a grammar teacher, but he was Bhattacharya. So when you say Acharya Deva in later Sanskrit, actually, it indicates we're talking about a spiritual teacher. A spiritual teacher sets the proper example. So I thought, well, instead of having everyone call me great king, what if they just called me spiritual teacher? It's like, it's like give. So that's why I ask people, who I wouldn't ask my god brothers because or god sisters because, there's an etiquette, like call me this. But for people, I would say, who are maybe younger, who have that kind of relation with me, at least accept me as a teacher. I don't have to be the teacher in your life, but I'm a teacher.
Mhm.
So Acharya Deva, spiritual teacher, as opposed to great king, which I don't know. When people call me great king, I'm thinking, well, whatever. You can imagine what I'm thinking. And also, and I'm doing what Prabhupada ordered me to do. Prabhupada had the great fortune, which obviously he deserved, that the first direct instruction from his guru became his life's mission. And by Prabhupada's great mercy, I had the same experience because when I joined the Berkeley Temple in 1969, 20 years old, and I was a student at Berkeley, and so I asked the temple president, Hans Duda, should I stay in school or just drop out and, sell incense all day or something? And so he said, I don't know, ask the regional secretary. So the regional secretary was a brahmachari because there were no sannyasis in ISKCON. The regional secretary was a brahmachari named Tamal Krishna. So I asked him, and he said, I don't know, ask Prabhupada. That's what it was like back then. I don't know, ask Prabhupada. So I wrote a letter to Prabhupada. They let me stay home one morning from Sankirtan, and I just wrote this letter. It's all the devotion I could find in my heart. I wrote this letter to Prabhupada, and he wrote back to me, and he said two things. Well, he said, yes, you should stay in school. He didn't say, no, it's a slaughterhouse. What are you doing there? And he said to me that in order for you to preach to intelligent people, educated people, you have to be educated. He didn't say just read my books. I mean, I was reading his books. In fact, Prabhupada was really happy when he found out that was the first disciple of his that was quoting the Sanskrit like him. I mean, he really thought it was a big deal. And he said certain really nice things. But anyway, so he told me to stay in school. He told me I had to be educated, well educated. Otherwise, how will you preach to educated people? And so when Prabhupada, got inquiries from people, or there were devotees who weren't really, I'm trying to be nice about this. Maybe Prabhupada saw they're not like professor material, which was frankly most devotees. He might tell them, why are you wasting your time just because they were wasting their time and they weren't going to really do anything with it. So that became the purpose of my life. That became my life's mission, that first instruction I got from Prabhupada. And now I'm talking to you. And basically, I'm just hoping against hope, trying to persuade people that if you really want to save ISKCON, the ISKCON that Prabhupada conceived of, then we need to get to work. And it's not just, what do they call it? Bean counting. We can't just be bean counters. Wow, we made 3 devotees last year. I mean, it's always glorious when someone takes to Krishna consciousness. It's always good. It's not necessarily strategically significant.
Mhm.
And yeah, go ahead.
So I'm just trying to get a visual of how it would look like in the temple room with women and men dressed in Western clothing.
It would look like what Prabhupada told them to do. Because there's a very famous quote from Prabhupada saying, no, men, married people don't have to wear these clothes. And he was like surprised anyone even asked him. What would it look like? I'll tell you what it looked like to me. It would look like intelligent householders who give a damn about the general public. I mean, there are too many stories, and I've heard a lot of them from the people themselves. Western people, intelligent, that visited Hare Krishna temple, took one look inside, turned around, and left.
I was, yeah, I had that experience too. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
So
first
what?
time.
So again, if we follow the cultural principle, and like I get these bizarre questions. I remember when I first launched Krishna West, and yeah, I was like public enemy number one for many people in ISKCON. And I would get questions. Like I was visiting the Oxford, the Hindu, what is it? The Hindu what's it called? Hindu Center,
For religious
C-
studies.
Center for Hindu Studies, something. And in Oxford. And I would have some of the, people there who were getting PhDs, devotees saying, does that mean that I can just wear like, like just wear like a Speedo male bikini into the temple room or something? But actually, I used to get questions like that all the time. And it shows this, how
Yeah.
should I put it? It shows the deep irrationality of so many devotees. In other words, either you wear a dhoti or you wear totally inappropriate, licentious, clothes that emphasize your reproductive organs. It's and those are the two choices basically. Again, comparing, I don't know, apples with car batteries or something. It's So let's compare respectful Indian dress and respectful Western dress. We can compare respectful Western dress for men and women with licentious Indian dress. It's so funny because it's just it's also like, when you're trying to analyze an argument or a claim, what you have to do if you know philosophy is you have to sort of dig out the underlying but unstated assumptions. So there's this very interesting sort of hidden assumption, hidden even to the people who are stating it. They don't even know what they're saying, which is what I call Vaikuntha sadhana. That, what you do is, because in the spiritual world, obviously everyone wears dhotis and saris and cholis, and even women cover their head, obviously. So therefore, Vaikuntha sadhana means dress. You're going to dress that way anyway in the spiritual world. So start now, and then you'll have a seamless re-entry into Vaikuntha because you're already be like trained up how to dress properly. This is like, if you actually know Shastra, if you know Indian history, this is so bizarre. It's like, it's crazy. Vaikuntha sadhana. And yet look at ISKCON art. Look at all the gopis wearing their saris and the men wearing their dhotis. And you've probably heard it say this a million times. Sari and dhoti aren't Sanskrit words. We know the gopis didn't wear saris because in the Bhagavatam it stated, skirts, belts, and even, upper cloth, lower cloth. I mean, it's just what is my goal apart from just the pleasure of, criticizing other people? It's that's but that would be selfish if that was just my motive. But no, it's the fact that ISKCON will not work unless we are spiritual scientists. You can have a medical problem and there may be a cure for it, but there's no doctor where you live. Or you go to a doctor that just doesn't know about it, not well read, hasn't kept up with the research. And so, what is the use of Prabhupada bringing a spiritual science if his followers aren't spiritual scientists? And so when you think that, well, we have to dress like this because it's Vedic dress and Prabhupada really wants us to do this, and people are getting benefit just by seeing it. You're not a spiritual scientist. Whatever you are, you may be a very sincere soul. You may have a lot of devotion to Krishna, but you are not a spiritual scientist. And there's that famous story. I mean, everyone knows about this, where when the book distribution explosion first happened, which also, by the way, exploded some other things like fraternal relationships among devotees, the respectful position of women. I mean, a lot of things exploded, but it kind of militarized ISKCON. And so then some devotees started wearing, and I love this one, karmi clothes. I mean, you could just see the fruit just streaming out of the clothes, right? I mean, it's so fruitive. So we should actually wear, like sort of Hawaiian shirts with all kinds like bananas and mangoes on it. So it's like really it's really fruitive dress. But it's interesting because there were some devotees, purists, who thought this is not good. Devotees are wearing harmy clothes. And they wrote a letter to Prabhupada. There's a very famous reply that Prabhupada gave. It's one of the most famous letters Prabhupada wrote, where Prabhupada basically said he was very pleased with his disciples who were going out to meet the public with Western clothes. And then he said to this devotee, well, but if you can't do that, then you can wear your dhoti. In other words, if you can't do what's really working, here's something from one of Satsarupa's little books on Prabhupada's life. After doing Lilamrita, there was a lot of other information that just didn't fit into Lilamrita, so they did smaller books. So when Balavanta, my godbrother, was running for mayor of Atlanta, and he would put on this, wear like a coat and tie and everything, and he also had neck beads. And he sent Prabhupada a picture. This is in Satrupa's book. When Prabhupada saw him wearing that, coat and tie, what Prabhupada said? He said, "This is what I always wanted. This is what I always wanted, that you become known, famous as American Vaishnavas." So basically, ISKCON, there's been a lot of mission drift. And Prabhupada said, let the neophytes stay in the temple and ring the bells. Or it's not just a festival of fruit and flowers. So ironically, so many leaders in ISKCON are really all gung-ho about building gigantic temples and don't really consider what Prabhupada actually said. So there's been very significant mission drift. And I mean, I sat at Prabhupada's feet in the Honolulu airport. There was a press conference. I think was it San Francisco? Anyway, I've been, since all my life been saying Honolulu, but it might have been might have been San Francisco. In any case, irrelevant. And Prabhupada, it was a press conference, and Prabhupada's disciples were all sitting at his feet, men and women. And Prabhupada pointed to us and then said to the press, "These are American boys and girls. I did not import them from India." What would he say now at the airport when like over 90% of all people greeting him were in fact from India? I mean, again, they're great souls, they're wonderful devotees. I always say this in my relationship with people from a Hindu background in ISKCON, they've always been generous, hospitable, helpful, kind. I have only good things to say about them. I can only say good things about their very sincere Krishna consciousness. They are not the problem. The problem is, frankly, Western devotees, the ones who say women can't be gurus. Those aren't Indians. Those are people about whom, anyway, I think everyone knows what I think of those people. I'm not convinced they are actually followers of Prabhupada. But um, in any case, Prabhupada said, people puffed up with concocted notions say that everything has to be done like in India. I'll give you another example. I mean, these are reruns for a lot of people, but when I went to Harvard, I was actually, I mean, they were really kind to me. Like normally, I mean, you get a bachelor degree, then you get a master's degree, then a PhD. They let me skip the master's degree. I just went straight. I got a bachelor's degree finally at UCLA, and then I went straight into a PhD program and got the PhD in probably an average of half the time of everyone else in the Harvard department, Harvard graduate program, at half the time. In fact, the chairman of the department, who was a famous scholar, he declared at the graduation ceremonies that I'd gotten the fastest PhD in the history of the department, which was over 100 years old at Harvard. But here's the point. Here's the point. When I went there to Harvard, I found out that even in the Sanskrit Indian Studies department, the Harinam in Harvard Square was a big running gag. It was a big joke. It was just a big joke for everyone. This is Harvard. Even when Prabhupada went to a famous university in Sweden, devotees said, "Do kirtan." He said, "No, this is a university. We have to give philosophy." So I went there, and everyone knew I was a member of the cult of Chaitanya. And but I went in fruitive pants and a fruitive shirt, and because I mean, just I hope this doesn't sound like bragging. It's just the way Krishna arranged it. That I was, everyone knew I was like the best student in the department. In fact, twice I got an entire Harvard department, all the graduate students, all the professors to come to my place to meet devotees and take prasadam. An entire Harvard department, the same people who were ridiculing devotees. And they started asking me questions sincerely, like, could you please tell us about ISKCON? They were actually very respectfully inquiring. And then Harvard put on a conference, academic conference, which was on translating Sanskrit into modern languages. And all the talks were then printed in a Harvard publication. And so even though everyone that spoke was a professor and I was a graduate student, they invited me to speak. And I gave a talk defending Prabhupada's somewhat non-literal translation style and showing how it's authentic and traditional. And then Harvard published it. So everywhere I went, it was a complete U-turn in terms of how they saw me, and professors and students were asking, could you please tell me about the Hare Krishna movement? So that's just an example. That's just one example. Yudhisthira in the Bhagavatam in the 10th canto, when I remember translating that, the what was it that Narada Muni came to Dwarka because Krishna, what is it? Krishna wanted to do something else. He wanted to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice to establish his pure devotees as an imperial throne. And so then Narada came and said, well, you can't really do that because Jarasandha is causing havoc and you can't do the Rajasuya sacrifice till you defeat him. So therefore, this is in the Bhagavatam, they postponed the Rajasuya, and Krishna, Bhima, and Arjuna went to Girivraja, the capital of Jarasandha, where Bhima killed him. So what was the point? Oh my God, what was I just going to say? What did I say before this? got involved in the Leela.
You were talking about how Harvard published
Yeah.
your paper and you spoke.
Oh yeah,
about-
yeah, I remember now. I remember now. So, but Yudhisthira, who's kind of like a Brahmin in a Kshatriya body, but he always wanted to be a Brahmin, so he didn't want to be the emperor, and he kept refusing to do it. And so, and Krishna and his brothers kept insisting, no, that you have to do it. And then finally, he said, when Yudhisthira finally agreed to do the Rajasuya and become the emperor, he said, the reason I will do it is because I want the world to see the glory of Krishna's servant. Because everyone in the world is worshiping political power and this and that. So let them see that simply because I gave myself to Krishna, he has put me in this position. And that's why I went to Harvard. To show that, because I knew, because that was Prabhupada's order to me. And even though it was Prabhupada's direct instruction to me, the GBC was all alarmed by it. Even though I had direct instruction from Prabhupada. When Rabindra Swarup, you must know Rabindra Swarup, when he joined the movement, he was a doctoral student at Temple University in religious studies. And so the devotees kept telling him, drop out. Prabhupada wants you to drop out. And so he wrote a letter to Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, no, of course, finish. Get your PhD. And so when he showed Prabhupada's letter to the temple president and the devotees, they said, it's obvious Prabhupada wants you to drop out. I mean, here's a letter from Prabhupada saying, don't drop out, get your doctorate. And the temple president is telling him, it's obvious that Prabhupada knows you're attached, and therefore he's letting you do this. He really wants you to drop out. I mean, we go on and on and on. Prabhupada said, of course, we should wear respectable clothes when we go out to meet the public. And then there's so many leaders saying, of course, you shouldn't do that. So basically, as I put it, we have in ISKCON a lot of very conservative leaders who have created a very conservative Prabhupada in their own image. And the real Prabhupada, as I've shown by page after page after page of quotations, was not at all like that. Look at Prabhupada's conversation with the famous poet Allen Ginsberg, where Allen Ginsberg says, Prabhupada, you're not going to be successful in America because everything is so Indian. And Prabhupada protests, no, I never said that. I never said you have to eat Indian food. I never said you have to wear Indian dress. And yet, we have all these leaders in ISKCON who I think are sincere. I don't think they're intentionally misrepresenting Prabhupada, but they are. I'm not going to mention any names. I don't want, don't want to be that rude, but yeah, devotees are bullied practically into not doing what Prabhupada said to do. And so what's really at stake here is, can ISKCON present to the world a spiritual science? When people come to our temples, often what they're told is not scientific. It's not a spiritual science. I mean, I don't mean everything. Obviously, they're told you're not your body. Obviously, that is a spiritual science, and so on. And meanwhile, the Western movement is just on the ropes, despite the fact that there are some very good devotees leading projects. But overall, it's practically become an Indian movement with some specialty projects, which are Western.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem, and so there's a lot at stake here. There's a lot at stake here. We have to be spiritual scientists. If you use the term devotional dress, you're not a spiritual scientist. If you use the term Vedic culture to mean cuisine, architecture, musical style, you're not a spiritual scientist. If you think in Vedic culture, women covered their head, you're not a spiritual scientist. If you think in Vedic culture, men address women as mother, you're not a spiritual scientist. because in fact, they do not address women that way. Women, if you think women can't be gurus, you're not a spiritual scientist. Not only did women in the Vedas, did some women become prominent gurus like Gargi and Maitreyi. I mean, they're in the Vedas as gurus. Not only that, some of the people that spoke the Vedas were women. The Vedas, the Holy of Holies, and some of the women who actually spoke the verses were women. The Bhagavatam and the Mahabharata are full of cases where wives are more intelligent than their husbands. I'm not trying to say, and there's also, a lot of cases where the men are more. But for example, the wives of the Brahmins who didn't want to send food to Krishna. And all the male authority figures forbade them, and they went anyway. And then the men said, Jesus, well, they didn't say Jesus, but the men at the end, they said, we were fools, and you were much more intelligent than us. The wives of Kalia were much more intelligent than their husbands. Not only that, I mean, I've made these points so many times that if you look at those beautiful scenes where Krishna is arriving at Indraprastha or Hastinapur, or arriving in Dwarka, or he's leaving, and those are typical scenes where people offer prayers, or they talk about Krishna. And the women go to the roof, which is where I would be, because there were probably like hundreds of tons of elephant and horse crap on the street and people pushing and shoving. I mean, if I was there, I'd be on the roof.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what you find is that those scenes, which are typical scenes where devotees glorify Krishna or offer prayers to Krishna, that a lot of the time, the prayers, number one, are offered by women. So the Bhagavatam wants you to hear the women's voices. And number two, those prayers are often some of the most linguistically and theologically sophisticated prayers in the Bhagavatam. If you just look at the grammar, if you just look at the composition, if you look at the philosophical points, these are some of the most intellectual, sophisticated prayers in the Bhagavatam, and they're offered by women. In the Mahabharata, after Pandu was persuaded his two wives to call Devas, and he's gotten 5 sons, he goes back to Kunti after Madri double dipped. She got she got twins, which Kunti thought, is that really cool? But anyway, so then Pandu wanted to have more, and then Kunti put her foot down and said, no, what are people going to think of me if I'm basically, having an affair with every deva in heaven? And so then this is very interesting. Pandu says to her, a woman must obey her husband, whether he's right or wrong. I mean, you can see that verse quoted by some of the smartas in India, so-called vice. However, they don't quote what Kunti says. She basically says, as I've put it many times, she basically tells Pandu, in your dreams. And she tells Pandu, no, you're wrong. And he gets the last word. Yes, dear. If you look at the case of Sudama Brahmana, where, I mean, he and his wife are almost like starving because they just, Krishna says in the Gita, Yadra Chalabha Santushta, be satisfied with whatever comes of its own accord. Nothing was coming. And so his wife said, your old school friend is now the richest person in the world. And they don't live, and he doesn't live that far away. So,
Go.
and then, so Sudama says, no, I don't want to go. So what happens? He goes. His wife says go. He says no. And the next thing you know, he's on the road. He's on the road to Dwarka. So then there's this thing about women, being shy and demure. In the Mahabharata, what you find is that there were resort areas. People took vacations in the same kinds of places we do. They went to the mountains. They went to a river, bathe, and it's interesting because once when Krishna and other Yadu royals were visiting Indraprastha, it was really hot, and they went down to the river for vacation. And it's mentioned what the activities were in this vacation. One of the activities was there was a wrestling tournament. What's interesting here is that it was a wrestling tournament for women. Yeah, the women had a wrestling tournament. It turns out that Krishna's sister Subhadra was trained and expert in driving a war chariot. So that's how they got out of Dwarka after, he eloped with Subhadra. Now, what's interesting is all this trashy talk about, well, women are this, women are that, and there's no consideration of Varna.
Yeah.
Draupadi was the Kshatriya, which is the feminine word. In fact, one sannyasi Prabhupada was even going around for years saying that women don't have Varnas, which is, with all due respect, an absurd thing to say, because in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjun's whole argument in chapter 1 is that we don't want Varna Sankara, which literally means Varna mixing. Prabhupada says unwanted progeny. It literally means Varna mixing. If women don't have Varnas, how could you have Varna Sankara? And how could Krishna say later in the Gita that in chapter 3, if I didn't do my duty to set an example, I would be the cause of Varna Sankara. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna accepts that Varna Sankara is a real thing. In fact, an example of real Varna Sankara that led to the death of the mixed progeny was Romaharshana, whose mother was a Brahmani and his father was a Kshatriya. And because he had the Kshatriya blood, he didn't stand up for Balaram when he entered the assembly of sages. And therefore Balaram killed him. That's an example of what can go wrong with Varna Sankara. So, but if women don't have Varnas, which is just absurd. I mean, a huge part of the Manu Samhita, this law book, is about who can marry whom by Varna. So there's all kinds of nonsense going on in relation to women. And so, like, the real point of Krishna West is not just, I don't know, criticizing, but it's trying to dig out the spiritual science that Prabhupada gave us that's practically been buried alive under all kinds of superstition, rituals, just bad philosophy. Like, for example, according to many devotees, if you're a Brahmana, you need to know that malevolent spirits, actually mala means like bad, and volenta is like wishing. Like malevolent spirits, they can penetrate into your body. They can penetrate left hands, but not right hands. That's why you cover your hand, you're chanting Gayatri mantra. Or they can, or also they bounce off fabric, any fabric, even synthetics, cotton, silk, synthetics. Therefore, you have to cover your hand when you're chanting. Now, even though we have pictures of Prabhupada chanting Gayatri with his hand exposed, or that you can't wear stitched clothing on the altar. I'm still waiting for someone to tell me where the contamination is in stitches, because it's made out of the same thing as the rest of it. And also explain to me why we have pictures of Prabhupada installing Radha Krishna and worshiping Radha Krishna with stitched clothing. And we also know that when Prabhupada opened the Krishna Balaram temple, and he told the devotees to hire all these brahmanas to do all these rituals, and Prabhupada said very strongly, we don't need all these rituals. They need it. But in the West, do people really need Hindu rituals? Do they want Hindu rituals in the West? So anyway, that's what Krishna West is really about. It's really about trying to dig out the spiritual science under this avalanche of superstition, ahistorical claims, the idea of a Vedic ethnicity, which has no reference in Shastra. Just trying to, dig out the spiritual science. Because last thing, and then I'll turn it over to you, Your Grace. The because I'm convinced the only thing that intelligent Western people will accept from us is a spiritual science. If it's really a science, people accept it. If you have a medical problem, let's say you're in pain, and there's actually a cure, there's a medicine that will actually relieve you without harmful side effects. Who asks, okay, I'm in pain, I have this serious illness, this medicine will actually cure it without any serious harmful side effects, and yet I'm not going to take it until I find out what country it was manufactured in. Because I will only accept medicine from certain countries. I mean, who does that? Only crazy people. So the point is, why are we trying to shove Indian ethnicity down their throats? Why can't we just let people accept the spiritual science? Why are we raising the bar higher when no one's jumping over it anyway? No one's jumping over the bar. So what we should do? We'll raise it higher.
Yeah.
Why are we creating obstacles for people instead of clearing away the obstacles? And why don't we do what ISKCON has never done? And that is just address the Western public in general. It's always either sort of young people are into Indian stuff, or it's Indians themselves, or it's people that want to take Hatha yoga. I mean, I had zero interest in Hatha yoga. I used to play, softball and basketball, and so, I mean, it's a nice thing. It's definitely good for your health, but it's not something I would ever have been interested in. And I think probably most of the people in the West that could become devotees are not interested in that.
So Acharya Dave, what kind of programs do you implement nowadays
Yes.
that emulate, like, no, rather propagate the spiritual science of Krishna consciousness?
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Well, and here's the ironic thing. In that sense, in the sense of what you just asked, Krishna West, and especially myself, I'm actually much more conservative. Because first, let's just start very briefly with Plato. Plato said correctly in the Republic that there are three dimensions to a human life, which are the sort of the sensual, your senses, uh, the emotional, which is the mind. The mind is actually the emotional part of us, and the intellectual, which in Sanskrit are just indriya, like Krishna says, indriyani parani ahur indriyabhyat parang manah. It's indriya, manas, and then buddhi. So Plato talks about that, and he was halfway back to Krishna. And so Prabhupada's simple program is perfect because kirtan is emotional if you get into it. If there's music, music gets people's emotions going. And then the class for your intelligence, and then, refreshment for the senses. So I have complete faith in Prabhupada's simple program. I think all this other stuff is just all this other stuff. And so that's what I do. I'm actually probably one of the most conservative leaders in ISKCON. Number one, because when I take Prabhupada seriously, when he says we're not, this is not Hinduism, it's not Indian, it's universal. I actually take that seriously. All the hundreds of statements Prabhupada said about you don't have to be ethnically Indian. The kurta, for example, devotional dress, Muslim shirt, of course, Muslim word, kurta, and yet it's devotional dress. It's like eternal Vaishnava dress. So I have all my faith in Prabhupada's simple instructions. I'm just doing the simple program, kirtan, class, and prasadam. And I do it in a way with an external presentation that doesn't just make people jump through hoops to get access to the spiritual science. And actually, most of our bridge programs are what I call foot of the bridge programs. Because it's like the old joke, why'd the chicken cross the road?
Mhm.
To get to the other side. So my question is, why'd the chicken cross the bridge? To get to the other side. So you may have a bridge program, but the fruit of workers or the mental speculators, they're not that stupid. And they actually look to see what's on the other side of the bridge. And so the very idea of a bridge program is that it's not real Krishna consciousness. And personally, I have no interest in bridge programs. And the fastest growing religions actually don't do them. So I think that what's the bridge? If I, let's say, do a program and I'm dressed like a gentleman, I actually wear a collar shirt. That's like as formal as I get. That's like my tuxedo. If I wear a collar shirt with buttons. And so if I'm wearing Western clothes, which I'm actually much more comfortable in than a dhoti, if I'm dressed like that and I'm explaining in a philosophical, intellectual way, that's not a bridge. That's the thing itself. That's the thing itself. When Prabhupada wanted so much to get intelligent people to join this movement, that's why he created the Bhaktivedanta Institute. And so if someone thinks that when I wear, let's say, a proper, respectable skirt or blouse or, just properly dressed, that's a bridge, you don't understand our philosophy. You don't understand Prabhupada's teachings if you think that's a bridge. It's not a bridge. And intelligent people do look to see what's on the other side of the bridge. And if on the other side of the bridge is just Indian ethnicity, then a lot of people don't cross the bridge.
Yeah.
And I get letters almost every day. And it's funny, the people who are approaching me, asking to be initiated or just inquiring, they tend to be very intelligent people. They tend to be doctors, lawyers. I just talked to a girl yesterday, very intelligent girl, gained a PhD in philosophy. Those are the people who are inquiring and want to just be a part of what we're doing. It's very different. I mean, we're getting intelligent, educated people that have resources, that have social influence. It's working. And it's working because, for obvious reasons, and Prabhupada told us to do it. He told us, do what works. He said people puffed up with concocted notions think you have to dress like in India. So that's what I'm trying to get back to the real Prabhupada, trying to get back to the real Vedic culture, the real history of our tradition. A tradition in which women can not only be gurus, they can be speakers of the Vedas. I mean, you realize what level that's on? You're not just teaching the Vedas, you're speaking them. So that's what I'm trying to do. When I joined the Hare Krishna movement, what I wanted was a spiritual science. I wasn't just looking for friends, love bomb me or something. I had lots of friends and I was gregarious. I had lots of friends. I had a good family. I was in one of the best universities in the world. And I wasn't looking, I really just wanted God. I really just wanted God. And and what persuaded me to join the Hare Krishna movement and to really practice bhakti yoga was not that someone snuck in some prasadam on my plate. It wasn't because someone, drew henna on my hand or something. It wasn't any of this stuff. It was because I read Prabhupada's Gita. And of course, as Krishna says, you've done this in your past life. So of course, when I ate my first Simply Wonderful, it kind of just exploded in my mouth. It was almost like, I mean, it's just like I'd never had such an intense pleasure in my life as when I ate my first Simply Wonderful. And so, I mean, prasadam is powerful, but you have to believe in it.
Yeah.
And I believed in the devotees. I mean, even before I really knew the philosophy, I just knew that they were on the spiritual platform. I could see that. I knew that chanting Hare Krishna was potent. And Prabhupada came to my university. And that was it. When I saw Prabhupada, as soon as I saw him, I just knew he's the he's the guy. He was powerful. He was just, and so yeah, I'll tell you what I believe is the technique to get people. The Maha Mantra, obviously preceded by Prabhupada's mantras and Panchatattva mantra,
Mhm.
speaking our philosophy straightforwardly, but very cleverly, like very intelligent, very clever, but nonetheless our philosophy. And then, so if people chant and they hear the philosophy, by the time they eat prasadam, they're starting to sort of believe in it. Yeah, that was my faith. Rupa Goswami says, Ado Shraddha, in the beginning, faith. That step-by-step program. Bhavet Krama. Krama means steps, like the steps in a process. It literally means step. Like, for example, Krishna's called Uru Krama, who took great steps. Or he's called Tri Vikrama, three wide steps. Of course, in his kind, that's Trivikram. Anyway, I won't get into Sanskrit pronunciation because although it is kind of amazing. So krama means a step. And it's just like in English. It can be a physical step you take, like vikrama, like uru krama, a great step, or it can be a step in a process. Like this is a 3-step process. And so when Rupa Goswami says bhavet krama, this can be, if you really do it seriously, your process, the steps. And so he says, Ado Shraddha. In the beginning, there's faith. And faith, it's interesting. Faith does not mean like it does for many Christians or other people that you believe in God. There's a different word for that, which is given in chapter 18 as one of the qualities of a Brahmana, astikyam. The word asti means he exists or he is or she is. Asti. So from the word asti, and the S in asti is where we get the S in English word is, or ist in German, or ace in Spanish, and so on. So astikyam, he exists. So if you just mean I believe in God, I believe God exists, that's the word astikyam. The word shraddha is actually technically it's a formal definition of shraddha is given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's like a formal definition. That shraddha shabde, that means by the word shraddha. The word shraddha, vishwasakahe, this means confidence, trust. And trust in what? Shraddha shabde vishwasakahe sudridha nischaye. The trust is literally a very firm sudridha, very firm conviction. The conviction is Krishna bhakti koile. Just by serving Krishna with devotion. Sarva karma krita hoy. Every duty will be done. Every duty will be done. And Krishna says in the last verse of chapter 17, any sacrifice you perform, anything you have faith in, or any religious activity, if you don't really believe in it, if you don't trust it, it's useless in this life and the next. So much in this life and the next. That's Krishna speaking. So, and yet, many people, if they see devotees and we're not dressed in a freakish way, if they just see us and we look like normal people, but we're Krishna conscious, many people will react by thinking there's something here. There's something different about these people. And then you could think there's something different about the food, because the more you have Shraddha, the more you get realization. Not by blind, just blind, unfeeling, unfaithful, well, I ate the sweet bowl. Even that simple thing, there's something special about devotees. That is Shraddha. So therefore, Shraddha Shabde Vishwasakahe. Oh no, that's the change. It's Ado Shraddha. Ado means in the beginning. Adi means first. And so Ado means at first. So Ado Shraddha Tatat, which means then, in the beginning faith, Sadhu Sangha, because if you feel the devotees are special or just there's something nice about devotees, then you maybe want to go and hang out with them a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's Sadhu Sangha. Swadosha da tatak Sadhu Sangha tata bhajana kriya. And if you hang out with devotees, you're going to eat prasadam, you're going to hear them talking about Krishna. And so that's bhajana kriya, devotional activity, literally. Devotional activity. That's what happens when you associate with devotees. Adoshada tatak sadhu sangha tatak bhajana kriya. And then if you're engaged in devotional activities, anartha nivritti. For example, if you go and eat a lot of prasadam, you'll gradually become vegetarian. And obviously eating that bloodlust food is anartha. It's very much an anartha. So you start eating better food and you start kind of believing it because the devotees are nice, the devotees are spiritual, and then I can see the food because once you believe devotees are spiritual, then you can see the food is spiritual, and then you eat the prasadam. Oh, I'm the host now. Oh, Nalini. Oh, poor Nalini. There she is. She made me the host. So because that's the point. If you have a little faith, even if it's you see the Harinam and you think this, there's something powerful about this, or the devotees are really dedicated, that counts as Shraddha. And therefore it's not completely agyata sukriti. You know that these people are spiritual. You think they're nice, they're special. And then bhajana kriya, and then you start to give up your useless activities. Anartha nivrittisa, and then nishta. Sta, we have in English, obviously. It's an English word, stand. That's the Sanskrit word stana, stand. It's the same word. And anyway, so then ni means it can mean within. Or it can also mean like down. So in other words, it's like we say in English, you take a stand, which means you stand firmly. You're not going to be pushed around. You take a stand. It doesn't necessarily mean literally that you're standing there like a pillar. It just means you take a stand. Like, this is my position. So that's what nishta means, that you take a stand for what you're doing. You're not going to be pushed out of it. You're firmly standing on your principle. So tato nishta ruchis, you start to get a taste, start to really enjoy Krishna conscious. And then, it just goes on and on like that. So, yeah, there is a spiritual science. It's just, I'll give you an example of what happens when you're just not doing things sort of in a very rational, learned way. There's always Hare Krishna movies. And every Hare Krishna movie, without exception, I mean, the ones that were Prabhupada's in it, they always show that Prabhupada came within a very short time. He had so many followers. and it spread all over the world. Well, okay, what if an educated person says to you, yeah, but obviously Prabhupada rode a wave. He didn't create the wave, because accepting a guru is one of the biggest fads in the Western world. When I used to go and sell books at universities, I remember being on the campus of University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and I was selling Back to Godhead, telling everyone the truth. The money goes to Bangladesh. But anyway, we were young. So, what was I just going to say? Oh my God, I forgot. What did I just say for that?
Prabhupada was, he didn't create the wave, he was riding the wave.
Yeah. So also they used to have these big boards with people who post flyers in the pre-digital age, like at universities. And literally half the flyers at major American universities were for gurus. The Beatles went to Hrishikesh. And then Paul McCartney wrote "Fool on the Hill" about Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, actually. And then Jimi Hendrix put the Vishvarupa on his record album. Unfortunately, put his own face on the Vishvarupa and died soon after. And then yeah, it's a true story.
Yeah.
But so Prabhupada rode the wave. The same Prabhupada, the same pure devotee seeing Krishna, couldn't get to first base in India. He went to Jhansi. It was the same Prabhupada. He didn't become a pure devotee on the boat, or suddenly he had a revelation in Butler, Pennsylvania. So the point is that, so now what if you raise the question? What if we raise the question in our movies? Well, if attracting a lot of people shows you're bona fide, and Prabhupada himself gave that argument a lot. If now Prabhupada used to say, the churches are empty and our temples are full of Western people. Now, of course, the churches are full and the temples are empty of Western people. Does that prove anything? If attracting a lot of people proves you're bona fide, what if the movement stops attracting a lot of Westerners? Does that prove we're not bona fide? I mean, that's obviously not my conclusion, but in other words, the fastest, easiest way to convince people that you're not a cult is to show you're capable of self-criticism. Because cults never engage in self-criticism.
Yeah.
And it actually is somewhat cultish in ISKCON that people are alarmed if you make, or some people, if you make a rational criticism, constructive criticism. So all the Hare Krishna movies, it's like, we're the Hare Krishnas. We go dancing all around the world, giving out nutritious food, and all of us are happy all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So actually, I'd better go. I forgot her name. What is your wife's name? Is that your wife?
Yeah, Anadi.
Anadi.
Yeah.
Beginningless.
Yes.
So actually, I'd better. So where is Connor?
Was there?
Good old Connor.
Can you see me? Yeah.
Yeah, I can see you. So Anadi, thank you for your questions. You were I really appreciate your questions.
Thank you for your answers. I'll try to, yeah.
So how should I put it? There's this, in a sense, because I've studied history a lot, most people that have taken birth on Earth did not really live at a time when the world could actually be transformed. There are just certain moments in history where suddenly the old, the grand narrative that tells the society who they are and everything and what life is about, like for many, many, many centuries in the West, it was the Bible. As far as like Prabhupada's question, like, who am I? Where do I come from? Just read the book of Genesis. And then, of course, there was all this stupid scientism that science will tell you everything. And that completely flopped, fell on its face. If you know intellectual history, became a joke. And so, so now we're at such a time. If ISKCON was going really well, there's a sense in which you personally probably might not really need you that much.
Wow.
But the fact is that Prabhupada needs us more than ever. And he doesn't need us just to continue pushing buttons that where nothing happens. It's like, remember those little wind up little toy like robots, and then they used to have, and then they have a battery, or they have a battery, and then they hit a wall and they just keep bouncing off the wall till the battery runs out. That kind of reminds me of some approaches in the Hare Krishna movement. Just keep beating your head against a wall until the battery runs out. And Prabhupada himself was so, what's the word? Oh my God, what's the word? So flexible, so he could just adaptive, responsive. If this didn't work, try that. He went to Jhansi, agile. He had such agility. ISKCON has very little. It's like keep trying the same things. When Prabhupada went to Jhansi and then he lost the nice property he had, he could have done what most of us do. Okay, let's just stay in Jhansi and get another place. He didn't. He left. He went to Delhi and he stayed in the ashram of his godbrother, his sannyas guru, H.D.Goswami. And he started to put out this little sheet, Back to Godhead. It wasn't like a magazine, it was like a sheet. And it had a lot about the news and everything. And he would go around Delhi just giving out this sheet. And he even had a heat stroke because Delhi is like, as they would say in Boston, wicked hot, in the summer. And so, and then someone said to him, people aren't going to take you that seriously if you're just giving out these sheets. You need to write a book. So again, he pivoted. He went to Vrindavan. He wrote the Bhagavatam. And then we know that he tried to give his book out to important people in India. Like he had his picture taken with the prime minister, giving him Bhagavatam. And then, but it's not that nothing was happening. I mean, what Prabhupada was doing before he came to the West would have, for, most preachers think, well, yeah, things are going great. Not for Prabhupada. Because he knew this isn't going to change the world. Sure, I can do a program. I can get a few people coming. It's not going to change the world. And Prabhupada he wasn't satisfied with something which doesn't have the potential to change the world. So then he got on the boat. Another amazing thing is he sailed past the British Isles. Why was that amazing? Because before Prabhupada, every Gaudiya Math preacher that tried to preach in the West, because they were totally London-centric. Prabhupada grew up till he was over 50 as the subject of an empire. London was the center of the universe. And yet Prabhupada realized things have changed. It's now America. It's no longer London. And he came to America. And then when he came to America, he went to Butler, Pennsylvania. There's absolutely no indication that Prabhupada at first wasn't just going to preach in Butler. It's not that as soon as he got there, the first thing he told his host was that the Agarwals that, well, obviously I'm not going to just stay in Butler. He just stayed in Butler. He went once he was invited and gave a talk at University of Pennsylvania. And then he just realized the glorious Vedic revolution is not going to happen in Butler. So he went alone to New York. And he just kind of like, I don't want to say bumming around, but he was just kind of, wherever he could stay. And then he got a loft. And then, the person he shared a loft with some young person who went crazy on LSD and threw all Prabhupada's possessions out a second-story window. But he went, before that even, he went with Dr. Mishra. And again, that was the plan. Basically sabotage Dr. Mishra. Because Dr. Mishra would give all these impersonal talks. And then after the talk, Prabhupada would sit down with these young people who really liked Prabhupada, and he would tell them the real story. And And so Dr. Mishra realized that, Prabhupada was basically, the jig was up. And so, he very politely asked Prabhupada, this is not working. So then Prabhupada went to New York. I mean, I can go on and on. Take New York, for example. I know there's a very significant fact about the original incorporation in New York that no one actually noticed.
Hmm.
I had to notice it because I was the main witness at that court case over the Long Island Temple. And so I read the incorporation papers of the first Hare Krishna Center. And and if you know Prabhupada and what he later did, it was like really an amazing discovery I made in that document. And that is that Prabhupada's original plan was that ISKCON New York was ISKCON. That is ISKCON. And it could have some branches in other places, perhaps in the future. Now, this is a legal concept, you could say, or an organizational concept that Prabhupada later completely rejected because he realized, for two reasons, I would say, he completely rejected it. And one reason was that he came to see that that was legally in a catastrophe waiting to happen. And because it's like, let's say, somewhere in some ISKCON center, which is part of the New York Corporation, let's say a devotee's negligent and someone slips and falls and sues ISKCON for $1 million. And then so the New York Corporation says, well, that was just, that was Philadelphia. That wasn't us. Then what happens is the lawyers against you, it's called piercing the corporate veil. In other words, in order to spread out liability, you create a veil, an illusion that these are actually different corporations, but they're really not. And therefore, when you pierce the corporate veil, then the entire corporation everywhere becomes responsible. And Prabhupada, even when some of his senior disciples were like urging him into centralizing ISKCON, he refused. He said it will destroy ISKCON. And so therefore, that's one reason why Prabhupada then totally did a U-turn and said, no, every corporation has to be independent, although they have to follow the GBC. The other reason was that something happened that Prabhupada never expected. And that is the movement started to spread like wildfire. And it just started to, and everywhere, and hundreds and then thousands of people started to join. And Prabhupada was very big on this point. There's a letter to Karundar where Prabhupada was adamantly against what he called bureaucracy. What he meant by that was that one person is in charge and then everybody else will do what that person says. People are not encouraged to also become leaders. And so on. And Prabhupada said that will destroy ISKCON. And so in order to give equal opportunity to every devotee to be a leader and to avoid a legal catastrophe, Prabhupada switched it. And I brought that up because he was pivoting, he was learning. For example, at one point, Prabhupada started the In God We Trust political party. And I happened to be with Prabhupada on morning walks when he was creating that program and talking about it. And it was like the big thing. Like every morning on the walk, that's what he would talk about. That was the big new thing for ISKCON. And then once they actually started doing it, and he saw that temple devotees were getting involved. God, if I was you, I'd be on that couch too. And then when Prabhupada saw the temple devotees, yeah, make yourself comfortable, please. That temple devotees were kind of giving up preaching to do the political work, and also legally, we could lose our tax exempt status if we engaged in sort of partisan political activities. So Prabhupada then said, stop it. He said, you can do the politics, but not in the temple and not with temple devotees. So, I mean, we could give a long, long list of Prabhupada pivoting, adapting, saying this is the most important thing. Okay, stop it. We can't do it anymore. We're going to make our headquarters here. No, that's not going to work. I see very little agility. Now, when people are after I've been, yelling at everybody for 15 or 20 years, is trying to figure out, yeah, actually, we need to do Western preaching. So we need agility. We don't change the basic principles. We are Rupa Nugas. Prabhupada is our founder Acharya. We chant japa, we do kirtan, we offer our food, we accept the philosophy, we accept Prabhupada's books as the highest statement of our philosophy. We are loyal to ISKCON because Prabhupada asked us to be. Those are all basic things. But degrading the movement to the point where you say wearing a certain kind of clothes is a fundamental principle of bhakti yoga, it's just trivializing the most sacred process. So that's why I'm going on and on and on, because we need to save the Hare Krishna movement from itself. And specifically, we need to revive the Western mission. So I better stop here. I'm sorry that, well, actually, I'm not sorry. Because all of you are really the hope, all of you are important. You're young, you're intelligent, and we need devotees to catch the fire that Prabhupada lit under us. The movement has become so sedate. It's dialectic. It's thesis, antithesis. And then finally, so the thesis is the old Hare Krishna movement, Rakam, Sakam, take no prisoners. We're all young and everything, and burned out the airport behavior just burned out the whole country. And also insisting on being weird in public. If you look at old pictures, Prabhupada's with his personal servants and secretaries, and they're wearing Western clothes. So go back to the basics and actually follow Prabhupada. And so you're young, you're intelligent, very likely you'll be on this planet much longer than me. And we have to get back into the Prabhupada spirit, where you understand that a vital, essential part of your spiritual practice is trying to spread the Sankirtan movement. That you cannot actually become an advanced devotee if you don't care about other people.
Yeah.
Because not caring about other people is super kanishta. And that's the definition given in the Bhagavatam. Let me see if I can find the verse number for you, where Krishna explains, actually, he doesn't use the word kanishta, which in Sanskrit means the lowest devotee. He uses the word prakriti, which means a devotee on the material platform, even though they're worshiping the deity. See if I can find that for you. Let's see. Okay, bingo. Okay, I'm gonna I can put the verse number in chat, and then I'm gonna read it, and then I'll have to bid you all farewell. Saying the word farewell means may you fare well, may things go well for you. Let's see, we are on Zoom, so I can put it in the chat, and make sure you copy it before we end because you'll lose it. Let's see, share. Where's my chat? Show chat. Okay, here it is.
Yeah.
So did you get it? That's the verse number. This is a very, very important verse. So what this verse says is, Archayam Eva Hariye, I'll just translate it literally. One who undertakes with faith, to honor, to perform puja unto the Lord, but only in deity worship. Archa is deity worship, Archa Vigraha. Archayam means, Archayam Eva means only in the deity form. Someone with faith is trying to worship Krishna, but only in the deity form. And Nata Bhakteshu, and you don't understand the deities in the heart of the devotees. So therefore, you don't make friendship with devotees. You don't understand Krishna's in the heart of every living being. So you don't worship Krishna in every living thing. You don't see that every living body is a mandir. And you think, no, Krishna's only in this building, in that visible form. Krishna's, the Bhagavatam says, Savakta, that devotee, Prakrita Smrita, is on the material platform. It's not liberated spiritual life. It's not even spiritual life, it's religious life.
Mm.
And if you act, so the reason you go to the temple and worship the deity is so that when you walk out of the temple, you see the same deity in the heart of every living thing.
Yeah.
And Krishna says several times in the Gita, I'm the father of this universe, Pitahamasya Jagato, and so on. And he says, I'm the mother also, by the way. And then Arjuna says that Pitasi Lokasya Characharasya, you are the father of the whole universe. And so we're all a family. There's only one family in the universe. And so if you don't care, you can't not care about other people and think that you're going to become spiritually advanced. It's just not going to happen. You can become a pious religious Vaishnava, but you're not really going to make advancement. In fact, that's third class. The second class devotee preaches. And so therefore, we used to keep score. Prabhupada used to keep score. Sometimes devotees, thinking they're smart, say, it's not about the numbers. Guess what? It is about the numbers. It's like, imagine, for example, because not about the numbers for your own pride, like I made more money in Sankirtan than you. Let's say, for example, you are working with the government health service and there's pandemic or something. And never mind the stupid people in the government. And so let's say there's a pandemic and you're trying to save lives. And so if you're desperately trying to get this medicine out to the people, and then someone says to you, hey, man, not about the numbers. You're trying to save lives. Or let's say like there's a house on fire and the fire department is desperately trying to get children out of a burning building. And someone says, hey, man, not about the numbers. If you think it's about the numbers for your own pride because you want to be a hero, yeah, then it's not about the numbers. But if it's about the numbers because you care about other souls, you care about other souls, and therefore the more souls we can save, it is about the numbers. I once walked into Prabhupada's room in Brooklyn. As soon as I walked in, I offered a base, and he said, because he was really happy with my zone. Latin America was just booming. And so I just walked into his room, and he said, so how many new temples? How many books? How many new devotees? And when, for the first time in ISKCON history, Radha Damodar party with Tamal Krishna lost the December marathon, and my zone won in Latin America. So then Tamal and I both flew to LA to see Prabhupada. And Prabhupada he loved it. And so he was just kind of joking. We were walking. I was on one side of Prabhupada and TKG was on the other side. And then Prabhupada, he was like, I mean, in his own words, this is really what he was saying. He was saying, so, no one could defeat Radha Damodar. I actually did say that. He said, but now it's defeated. He kind of said, so you're going to take that? What are you going to do about it? I mean, obviously, he didn't use that kind of, but that's what he was saying. And then we were all laughing, because it was all in good fun. And then Prabhupada stopped and said, and I'll never forget it. He said 4 words, which I've never forgotten. I like this competition.
Mm.
We don't compete anymore. I mean, pujaris don't compete.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, I mean, I can say for a fact that had there been no competition, my zone in Latin America probably would have sold, this is not hyperbole, probably at least 100 times less books. Oh, come in. It's like, to give an example, let's say you have a family reunion at a park, like a picnic, right? The extended family comes, and let's say you have like a 3-legged race or you're tossing water balloons. I mean, you really want to win, or maybe there's like a little pickup basketball game at the park,
Yeah.
just family, cousins, and everything.
Yeah.
And so obviously, once the game is over, everyone's just a family. But the point is, you really want to win. You really want to win, even though, you're laughing. It's a family reunion, but you really want to win the game. And that's the mood. Here's another word that doesn't even exist anymore. I mean, no one says it. It used to be a very common word in ISKCON, and that is yatra. Yatra, like the English yatra. And the reason it's not used anymore is because there are no more yatras. Everyone is just out for their own little program. There aren't large scale programs anymore. Like there's no West Coast yatra. There's no, let's say, Northeast yatra. There's no Australian yatra. It's just a bunch of temples with very few Western people, and the center of everything is puja.
Yeah.
So ISKCON is there is a huge amount of mission drift.
Yeah.
And we have to somehow try to fix it for Prabhupada. That's the point. Anyway, I better let you go because but thank you very much. I mean, I really appreciate you actually hung in there and didn't no one said I can't take anymore and ran out of the room. So
it was wonderful.
Thank you so much.
It was really, really inspiring. Thank you for giving us your time.
Yes.
no, thank you, because you're the hope. I've got what's that old saying? One foot in the grave, the other foot on a banana peel. Because if you don't, so I mean, I see all of you as the hope for Prabhupada. But you really have to know where you are in time and history. You have to know what's really going on. Otherwise, it's like, for example, I was giving Bhagavatam class every day in Gainesville, and I mean, ISKCON, somehow there's this very sacred principle that you must sell people books that it's extremely unlikely they'll read or understand. It's just magical, it's just magical. And so to me, it's how many people you got to read the books. And if I mean, Prabhupada in the Bhagavatam gives very advanced theology, and it's full of jargon, because anything, whether it's the U.S. Navy or the Catholic Church or a professional baseball team, I mean, every organized group has a jargon because that's how you communicate. You have a special language you use, and Prabhupada has this. I mean, por favor, no me estoy hablando. Sí, déjelo. Gracias. Estoy dando una conferencia y so what did I just say?
The jargon. Prabhupada's jargon.
Yeah. So so his books are full of jargon. Why? Because it's a technical science. And every science, whether it's biology or physiology or quantum mechanics, not only every science, every branch of science has a jargon. So for us, I can read Prabhupada's books and think, wow, nothing could be more clear. And I know very well that Prabhupada, his books are far more potent than anything I'll ever write. But the point and the goal is to bring people to Prabhupada. But the question is, if you're thinking, how do you do that? Would it be helpful to give people books they can actually understand? Or is it just magical? So, I mean, there's so much to do. Basically, there has to be what's the word? I mean, ISKCON is Prabhupada's movement. I'm a member of ISKCON, but really so many things have to be adjusted. That was Prabhupada's word, adjusted.
Yeah.
That's why I started Krishna West, because in unity there is strength. And another thing is, everyone's just what's that great line? I think it's from the Old Testament. It's in Handel's Messiah oratorio that has hallelujah and all that. It's in one of the songs is from the Bible that all we like sheep have gone astray, everyone to his own way. it's dialectical. It's like one extreme to the other. When when Prabhupada was here, ISKCON became very militaristic, and no one in a temple was allowed to think except the temple president. I mean, it didn't start out like that, and so then it went to the opposite extreme, that everyone just does whatever they want.
Yeah.
And it's a society which seems incapable, even to save itself, it's incapable of forming large-scale projects in the Western world. It's just like the example I always think of is what happened to Greece. I mean, especially after they defeated the Persians, one of the great Greek heroes, of course, was Brad Pitt. So, but Greece, they were just very powerful. They had, and they had all these little island, like city states. And they only united really to save themselves, like when the Persian Empire invaded them. But then what happened is, after a while, a new power started to rise in the Mediterranean, which was Rome. And then Rome started conquering, and eventually they had their eyes on Greece. And so the only hope of the Greeks to retain their autonomy as a Hellenic civilization was if they could unite and oppose the Romans. Otherwise, they were just going to become, taken over by Rome. And what happened is they could not do it. To save their own autonomy as a civilization, they could not unite. And they ended up just as a Roman colony. So in the same way in ISKCON, it's clear that there has to be, I've talked to very important ISKCON gurus that, obviously everyone has their own project. No one's working under anyone else in terms of the leaders, but we have to, form an alliance. We have to really have solidarity, Western preaching. And I've had very famous ISKCON gurus telling me, I think you're right. I can't argue against that, but I'm not going to do it. And I don't think they're bad people. I mean, they're actually very sincere devotees, but they just can't do it. And so it's like everyone has their own little project. And the movement does. So I started Krishna West because it's sociologically rational that if people join and work together, you can actually, in unity, there's strength. And so, and it's funny, actually, maybe it's karma, but just as Greece could not unite to prevent a Roman takeover, then Italy itself, as time went on, when you go maybe 1,000 years later, they couldn't unite. You get all these little Italian city-states because Italy had become Roman Empire was so heavily centralized, it eventually went to an equal and opposite system, these little city-states. And even when Northern Europe became powerful, like the Holy Roman Empire and the Habsburg Empire and France and so on, and so just to save its autonomy, Italy had to unite. They couldn't do it. Because I'm not Italian, I'm Venetian. I'm not Italian, I'm Genovese, from Genova. They couldn't do it. And so ISKCON, even to save the Western mission, to save any hope of actually changing the world, we have to start working together. Devotees can't do it. Everyone, again, I'm not saying that we don't give everyone autonomy. Of course, everyone has their own project. Prabhupada insisted on that. But there's solidarity. Anyway, so I hope you understand this. You live in a time when you can do something incredibly important for Prabhupada, and you can start in Boise, Idaho. You're like, why not Boise?
Yeah,
Why not? Yeah.
Maybe I'll get up to Boise actually,
Please.
and browbeat you even more. Anyway, so thank you very much for listening. I mean, because really you're young and you are the hope.
Please.
And thank you to Nalini, who's
Yes.
actually not well. She's a little sick, but she hung in there.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And so, yeah, keep in touch, and maybe I'm actually on my way to the West Coast. So maybe before
Okay.
too long, we can do something again.
Please.
Please, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I hope you'll do it.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.